Good morning. My name is Phyllis Gillespie, and I want to welcome you, hopefully, to our first annual Town Hall Forum where we get to discuss, do Black Lives Matter, do all lives matter, type issues, and be proactive in our community to see if we can bring together some unity so that we can move forward and do the things we need to do for our communities to grow and prosper, and for our children to grow into a better environment, to be productive, so that they can be successful in their lives. There's going to be a little bit of a change to the program. We are going to start with introducing our panelists, the invocation. First, introducing our panelists. Mr. Dyson will speak, and then we will have comments from the audience. We'll have panel one discussion, and the topic there is racism, its effect on the African American community, and you have the subtopics in your program. We will follow that with a panel two discussion, and then wrap up with Mr. Dyson giving comments and taking questions from the audience. Dr. Jackson, if you can say the invocation, please. Yes, ma'am.
As we're here today we're coming together in the spirit of unity for our community. And I believe unity begins by our extending our hand one to another. So if you would just gently grab the hand of the person, touching, and as we touch, we are in agreement. As we come today, that we're going to touch and agree as we go before the Father. Heavenly Father, as we gather in this event that I believe you have ordained, for you have given it as a vision. Father, you created us. All of us are fearfully and wonderfully made in your image and in your likeness. And because you like diversity, you created us in various ethnicities, cultures, and backgrounds. And so, Father, symbolic of the spirit of unity, as we link hands, and as law enforcement, community, clergy, and other organizations have gathered, let us hear what you would have to say to us today. Let us leave with an understanding, but most of all, let us leave here with a plan of action. Let our purpose and our mission be realized. And as we come together, let your Holy Spirit direct our thoughts, our conversation, and although we are diverse in our thoughts, let us be unified in you. Bless everyone represented here today, and we thank you. Amen.
We're going to have, and just to introduce our committee who's been working on this since May. It kind of started when Jean Law Scott and I did a forum in Martin County, and it was well received. And Reverend Richardson said, hey, I want to do the same thing in St. Lucie County because we kind of need to spread this along the Treasure Coast. So Jean Law Scott, Robert Delancey, and Daphne Cooper, Reverend Richardson, and I have been working for the last several months bringing this together. And I hope this is not the last time that we meet, and that we can continue to grow and develop an action plan for our community. I'm going to have Huey Anderson come up and introduce our distinguished panelists.
Good morning, everyone. Well, we are so honored to be here to talk about All Lives Matter. Just because of your very presence here today, it shows your commitment to understanding that, yes, all lives do matter, and all lives make a difference when we come together and work together. It is my privilege to introduce to you our panelists for today. They will not be in any order. I will start with our representative, Larry Lee Jr. Representative Larry Lee Jr., who is a native of Fort Pierce, Graduated from Fort Pierce Central High School in 1972. He attended Livingstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina, where he graduated with a degree in health and physical education. Following graduation, he moved back to Florida and worked as an insurance agent and eventually started a small business that provides State Farm insurance. He is married to Mrs. Alice Lee, and together they have an adult daughter. He is also a state representative who has worked very hard for his district and has worked on many, many successful things that have taken place while he's been an elected official. Representative Lee, would you please stand up or raise your hand, whichever is best? Let's welcome State Representative Larry Lee Jr. Thank you, Representative Lee. Desmond Meade. Desmond Meade, who was formerly homeless and worked hard as a community servant, has become the current state director for Faith in Florida's Lives Free campaign. Mr. Meade is the president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. He is the chair for the Florida Coalition on Black Civic Participation and Black Men's Roundtable, and a recent law school graduate from Florida International University College of Law. Mr. Meade has worked extensively with helping to help felons who have been disenfranchised. He's worked to foster dialogue about race relations and has worked closely with returning citizens in leadership and development. Please welcome Mr. Desmond Meade. And I apologize now if I butcher any of your names. Please don't take it to my heart, but to my head. Our next panelist that we have with us, the Chief Deputy of the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, Gary Wilson. Gary Wilson has been in law enforcement career which spans over 3 decades. He began his criminal justice career as a police officer in Milford, Connecticut. In 1982, he moved his family to Port St. Lucie and joined the Port St. Lucie Police Department. There he worked in a variety of assignments and rose to the rank of commander. In 1996, the Palm Beach Post named him Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. That same year, he was given the name Port St. Lucie Citizen of the Year. In November of 2000, he retired after 18 years with the Port St. Lucie Police Department to serve as Chief Deputy in the Administrative Office of Sheriff Ken Mascara. Please welcome Gary Wilson. Chief John Baldus. Chief Baldus has been a police officer for 24 years and was appointed Chief of Police for the Port St. Lucie Police Department in August of 2012. He oversees 285 sworn and non-sworn police personnel, 343 volunteers, and a $34 million budget. He is a lifelong Floridian, yay, there's still some of us here, and has served as the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commissioner Officer for 7 years. He resides in Port St. Lucie with his beautiful wife and 3 children. Please, let's welcome our chief. Attorney Jerome Stone. Attorney Stone has spent his early years of his career inside the criminal justice system. As a prosecutor for the state of Florida, in that role he handled criminal cases at all levels from petty theft to murder. He transitioned into criminal defense and civil litigation when he joined a national law firm, where he began to concentrate on personal injury and wrongful death cases. While there, he often teamed up and worked on cases with an attorney who is now his partner. He is a lifelong athlete who played football in high school and in college. He recently expanded the scope of his practice to include sports and entertainment, and he is qualified as an NFL and NBA certified player agent. He also continues to represent defendants in criminal cases but his primary litigation activity remains in the areas of personal injury and wrongful death. Please welcome Attorney Jerome Stone. Next on our panel, we have Amandro. Oh, yay, okay. 23-year veteran with the Fort Pierce Police Department. He has spent the last 3+ years as one of the department's two deputy chiefs. He's been part of a command station for the last 15 years and currently oversees District 2. He has his master's degree in criminal justice administration from Lynn University, which he received in 2005, and his bachelor's degree, which he earned in fine arts from St. John's University in 1998. He is the father of 2 beautiful children, both teenagers, one a daughter, Morgan, in 10th grade, and Dominic, his son, who was in 8th grade, and both attend Lincoln Park Academy. Please welcome Frank Armando. Our next panelist is the mayor. Mayor Gregory Overick is the father and husband, small business owner, and native Floridian and former government official. He grew up fishing Florida's waters and building forts in its forest. After receiving his BA in Marine Environmental Systems from the University of Miami, he began a career in government which spanned over 17 years, serving in several key positions, including planning, zoning, community redevelopment agency director, assistant city manager, and city manager. He is the proud husband to a beautiful wife and the father to wonderful children. Would you please welcome Mayor Gregory Overick? In his absence, he's not with us yet. Our next panelist is Scott Van Duzer. He is the president of Van Duzer Foundation and owner of Big Apple Pizza and Pasta restaurant. The Van Duzer Foundation recently celebrated its 8th birthday. What started out as a small but dedicated group of individuals wanting to make a positive impact on the community has turned into a grassroots phenomenon that has garnered international and serves as a role model for other communities and organizations. The foundation has helped over 70 St. Lucie County families experiencing tremendous difficulty. It's raised over 77,000 pints of blood, which translates into saving over 21,000 lives, and has hosted 5 tremendously successful food drives, garnering over $1 million of impact in the community. He has been very active and continues to serve as a citizen wanting to make a difference, believing that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but just get up and be a part. Please welcome panelist Scott Van Duzer. Our next panelist member is Dr. John Prince, who grew up in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. He graduated from the University of Florida with a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in elementary education. He is in his 23rd year of public education. He has an extensive history in the education system, working and helping those who need that additional assistance. In the summer of 2015, Dr. Prince accepted the position of Deputy Superintendent of St. Lucie County Public Schools, with the goal of becoming part of a tight-knit community and improving student achievement in many schools. Please welcome Dr. John Prince. Attorney Lorenzo Williams. Attorney Williams is a senior partner in the law firm of Gary, Williams, Watson, and Gary. After graduating from high school, Mr. Williams continued his studies at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, where he majored in political science. Mr. Williams began his career working as a staff counsel for the Urban League of Dade County. In July of 1978, Mr. Williams joined fellow Shaw alumnus Willie Gary and the law firm of Gary and Lewis in Stuart, Florida. 2 years later, Mr. Williams became a senior partner in the firm. For over 30 years, he has specialized in civil litigation, including personal injury, wrongful death, medical malpractice, and commercial cases. He has been married for over 30 years to his beautiful bride, Mrs. Jovita Williams, and together they are the proud parents of 4 adult children, with their twin sons both following in the footsteps of their father and becoming attorneys. Please welcome Attorney Williams. Dr. Elizabeth Jackson. Dr. Jackson is the senior pastor of Life Changers Global National Ministries in Vero Beach, Florida, and has served in ministry for over 25 years. She is an anointed life coach, teacher, mentor, and community organizer. She has a global vision to bring real change to individuals, communities, nations, and mandated in the Great Commission of Jesus Christ. God has anointed her to preach the gospel to the poor, heal the brokenhearted, preach deliverance and recovery of sight to the blind, and set liberty to them that are bruised. Dr. Jackson is a member of many professional and community organizations. This marks her 4th year as chapter president of the Treasure Coast, Florida chapter of the Links Incorporated. She is an Indian River County NAACP Silver Lifetime member, serving as Civic Engagement Voter Education Chair. Additionally, she is a member of the Faith in Florida Indian River Community Partner and member of the PICO Women's Network. Please welcome Dr. Elizabeth Jackson. Dr. Donna Mills has been married to the Reverend Kenneth Mills Sr. for 30 years. They have 4 children. All of their children grew up in St. Lucie County and are the product of the St. Lucie County school system. Dr. Donna Mills is a proud grandparent of 2 grandsons. The eldest grandson is 9 and attends a St. Lucie County public school as the 4th grader this year. The youngest is 3 years old. Our youngest child is a 10th grader who attends St. Lucie County Public School. And at the age of 14, he has maintained a 4.0 grade point average and is currently a dual enrollment program. Our middle school son attended Centennial High School and received his school equivalency at Indian River State College. Our oldest graduated from Lincoln Park with 1 year of college through the dual enrollment program. She continued her education at Howard University in Washington, D.C. on a full scholarship and graduated with 2 bachelor degrees of arts in political science and philosophy. She attended her graduate studies at Yale University in Connecticut and graduated magna cum laude. She obtained a degree in law and has since returned home and resides in St. Lucie County. She is an attorney and practices law. Please welcome Dr. Donna Mills. Two more. Dr. Danny Hoey, is Administrative Director of Minority Affairs. Dr. Huey has been named Administrative Director of Minority Affairs at Indian River State College. He has worked with the students to help promote educational advancement for minority students, in addition to overseeing the Upward Bound and Student Support Services program. A Fort Pierce resident, he joined Indian River State Community College in 2011 as an assistant professor of English. Please welcome our panelist, Dr. Huey. And our last but not least is Commissioner Kim Johnson, who is the Vice Chair of the Commission. Kim Johnson is a native of St. Lucie County and graduated from Westwood High School. He returned back home to become very effective and promote real change in his community, where he serves as District 5 County Commissioner. He hopes that bringing both the North and South County together for collectively and positive change in the future will make a difference in the community. He is very active on various boards, both local and state. Please welcome Commissioner Kim Johnson. And that concludes our panelists who will be today's speakers. We will now turn it over to Reverend Frank. Will.
Give Sherry a hand, all right? Thank you, Carrie. We are excited that we are here today at the Civic Center for this forum that has been, as you know and heard, the two ladies who have worked so hard, Jean Law Scott and Phyllis Gillespie. Give them a hand for their hard work. I'm gonna get thank yous out of the way, but I want to do some housekeeping real quick. If you're sitting in that second section, I'm gonna upgrade you right now. You get to sit in the VIP section. Come on up here a little bit closer. Come closer. You can sit in these expensive seats right here. No need for us to spread out. Let's come in together as a family. Amen. If you're not working the event, come on up here a little bit closer. I'm gonna upgrade your ticket today. All right, we're glad to be in here. Those who come later, they get the cheap seats. We are super excited. Our panelists are here. Our featured speaker, as you all know, is a man who is renowned around the country, known throughout the world for his precise and strategic academic point of view on African American and social issues in America. He is an author of many books. You may know Race Matters, Holler If You Hear Me. He is a professor at Georgetown University. I could go on and on about the awards of him being an Essence Award, Ebony Award. He's been top 100, top 40. He has been awarded everything that you could give because of his relevancy about the issues and the concerns of our communities, specifically those that affect the African American community. He is unapologetic about how he approaches the issues and situations of our community. You know that we have many things going on today, and they want to say, well, why are we doing it? Nothing's happening here in Port St. Lucie. Well, number one, it may not have been on the news. Number two, if it's not happening, we won't keep it that way. And it doesn't happen without us being proactive. And so it's mindful if you see fire going all around you and you don't put up any fire prevention. That would be foolish. And so that's what we are here today to do. We want to leave here today better than we came. We're going to come with strategies. We have commitment from some of the finest people in our community, and we're excited about that. But right now, we're going to hear from our keynote speaker, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. Won't you welcome him as he comes? Come on, let's welcome Michael Dyson. Like we're glad that he's here. Michael Eric Dyson.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson, for this tremendous honor to be here today. And I want to thank attorneys Law, Scott, and Gillespie, and all of the other wonderful people who are responsible for sponsoring this gathering, and to this distinguished panel of experts who will lead us through a discussion of what is happening all across the world. Of course, we are mindful of where we are, and I want to thank this young prophet, Dr. Richardson, for doing such a great job. I've seen him grow up and saw him when he was incredibly engaged with his father in New York, and now down here in Florida where the living is easy and the burden is light. Better weather down here than in New York, that's for sure. And but what a wonderful opportunity it is to see his brilliant leadership of his particular church, their particular church, and their connection to the broader community. Because if you in a church and you ain't doing nothing about the society in which you live, you ain't really doing church right. Right? And to these wonderful jurists and lawyers who are helping to sponsor that this morning. I met them, I thought they were high fashion models and just doing law on the side. But obviously with their critical jurisprudential rationality in tow, they are taking care of business. So I celebrate them as well, Sisters Gillespie and Law Scott. And look, we know the world we're living in. We saw what happened last night in Paris, right? Because that affects too. On the one hand, we know that terror is real. It didn't begin with 9/11. Terror has been in the world for so long, we are now joining the modern world. And part of the tragedy, of course, is that there are forces arrayed against that which is good. But it didn't start with this particular conflagration. We know how we must resist the temptation to judge all Muslim brothers and sisters because of what some radical extremists have done. And we know that from our own situation, even in here in America, where the actions of a margin have colored the perception of those in the mainstream. And so we offer our prayers and our thoughts to the folk of Paris. When we think about where we are in America, we are not unlike what is happening across the globe. There is fast terror, those things that explode and unleash horrific forces of evil. And then there is slow terror. Fast terror is bombs. It scares us. Guns, they scare us. Slow terror is being expelled from school earlier than you ought to have been. Slow terror is being disproportionately concentrated in incarceration. Slow terror is seeing the average worth of a black woman be $100 and that of a white woman be $42,000. Slow terror is living in a society where white supremacy, social injustice, economic inequality prevail. Slow terror is being a poor white person in Appalachia, confined, limited, while others enjoy greater access to mobility. So fast and slow terror is real. And the reality is, when we talk about this theme today, all lives matter. Now, some people say, well, in an era of Black Lives Matter, why is it that we have then generated a term that says all lives matter? First of all, we presuppose all lives matter. If all lives don't matter, then no lives matter, right? So when Martin Luther King Jr. and the great figures of the civil rights movement, Diane Nash, Joanne Robinson, Ella Baker, Septima Clark, Ralph Abernathy, Malcolm X, the Black Freedom Struggle, Stokely Carmichael, James Baldwin, when those figures, Cesar Chavez, when it broadened into migrant workers and their defense, when we think about the 1960s, we knew that the argument was that all people should matter in America, because we were living in a society where all people were supposed to matter but didn't. All men are created equal. That's the edifying universality of our own documents. Of course, where were the women when you said all men matter? Now you might say, well, you know that they were being universal when they said men, they meant all people, but that's part of the problem too. You got to recognize men is men, women is women, children is children, right? Gender does matter. So already even in the all, there was some specificity. There was some blindness. There were some non-universal elements in the universal. And why would we need to have a civil rights movement if all people were already acknowledged as being equally worthful and equally valuable? So we know that even under the notion of all lives mattering, all lives did not matter. Many white brothers and sisters joined black and brown brothers and sisters in the 1960s to fight for equal rights in America because some people were denied legitimate access. Women could not vote. Black people could not vote. In the South and all across this nation, all lives made a difference, but they weren't making a difference there. Therefore, you had the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, not as a repudiation that all lives matter, because when you live in a world, say the NFL, where there is now the revelation that there has been some domestic violence against women, if you say women's lives matter, that doesn't mean that athletes' lives don't matter. We know they matter because you covered up for them. Do y'all understand what I'm saying up here? So we know when we say women's lives matter, we're not denying the legitimacy of athletic lives. Those athletic lives are already obviously mattering too much so that they exclude a consideration of women who are victimized and brutalized in a culture of patriarchy that unconsciously elevates men's lives above women's. And so when we say Black Lives Matter, we ain't dissing nobody. We ain't trying to harm nobody. We just trying to get a piece of the sweet potato pie. I'm sorry, I was at Tom Jenkins last night. I had to have some. Y'all know about Tom Jenkins, y'all? Texas Hold'em. I was over there too. Had to chase both barbecues. I'm an expert on this. Texas Hold'em is good too. So the point is, my brothers and sisters, when we talk about lives mattering, when we say Black Lives Matter, as the president said the other day, and it's interesting to me because his life wasn't mattering to a whole bunch of folk who said he wasn't even born in America, right? This ain't no defense. You can be legitimately critical of the president. I got some criticisms too, but to deny the legitimacy of his humanity and the fact that he was even born here, and you got a cat running for president now who based this whole thing 2 years ago on denying access to this man of his common humanity and his citizenship, we got to be honest about that. And many white brothers and sisters don't often hear black people tell the truth to them because black folks' niceness and politeness has prevented a necessary engagement with the truth that white brothers and sisters have to understand. So we're not being nasty or vicious or mad. We're trying to be honest and open about a conversation that has to exist. On the flip side, we also know if Black Lives Matter, all black lives should matter. That means gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual. Oh, I see. Now we got a problem. All lives that are black, all lives that are white, all lives that are brown, all lives should matter. Right? Just because you got a different sexual orientation, don't be trying to ask God to co-sign your bigotry. And then police lives matter. Right? Now ain't nobody gonna act like we don't need the police. Might have to call them on some of y'all before I'm gone. But I'm saying, thank God they up in the room. Right? When we call the police, we want the police to know who the criminal is and who the real citizen is who ain't the criminal. Now let's not lie about it. We know that sometimes our police brothers and sisters have made mistakes as the rest of us have made mistakes. So we need to be honest about that. There is a culture in policing broadly in America that has been predisposed to be prejudiced toward and biased toward those who are different, regardless of your race, class, sexual orientation, or the like. You live in one neighborhood, you used to those folk, Lithuanian, Italian, Polish, Irish. You know what the grandmas look like. You know how people raise their voice. You're not upset when folks say certain things because you can deal with it. But you go into another neighborhood, you may not be familiar, right? You live on the east side, those folk from the west side. You in the Crips, they in the Bloods. Okay, I'm sorry, that was, you're a Baptist, they're Presbyterian. There do be a difference. You're Pentecostal, they are Catholic. So the point is that if you're not used to dealing with people in your own neighborhood and seeing how they raise their voice, you might be upset. That's why community policing is critical. Because when somebody raises their voice, they ain't trying to shoot you. You ain't got to shoot them. Why is it that black police officers are not usually disproportionately involved in police-involved shooting? I think we're laying on something here that needs to be shared with everybody else. I think black police officers need to be the paradigm for how police people engage with people in their community across the board. Because if there are a low number of black or brown police involved in police-involved shootings, that means they're doing something right. Right? Now look, I ain't saying there ain't never a time when police got to use force. We know some of them. We know your families. I don't put nobody's business on the street. Let me just talk about mine. Right? We know that there are times when force may be unfortunately necessary to restore order. If a police person shows up and they acting cool and they're saying sir and ma'am, and you get foul with it, you're gonna have to be restored to a sense of balance, right? We know that's real. Some folk get out of their minds, mental health issues, unfortunately, get over policed because the psychological services of our society have not addressed that. Drug addiction, family dysfunction, we know those things are real, so we dump those in the lap of the police as if they can be therapists and father confessor and God at the same time. On the other hand, we have to say there are police people. They are born in the same society in which we are born. They inherit the same set of unconscious reflexes toward realities that we confront. Let me tell you something. I spoke for the Black Police Association of, maybe I shouldn't mention the name of the city, last weekend, last Saturday night. Big old gala they had, 40 years. And do you know when I talked to many of those police, they had some of the same complaints that normal black citizens have? They take off their uniform, they're scared too. They're scared because they might be mistreated. Somebody might not see that they're a sergeant or a valiant officer on the street, or that they are on patrol, or that they are a lieutenant or captain, or maybe even the chief of police. So we know that violent visions of black or brown or red or yellow or poor white people prevail. Let's not lie and pretend they don't. At the same time, we've got to address the vicious persistence of crime in our communities. Now, I was on Meet the Press with Rudy Giuliani, and he said it ain't about Michael Brown and it ain't about what's going on in Ferguson. It's about you black people killing each other, and that's why the police are there. I said, Rudy, 93% of black people are killed by other black people. 84% of white people are killed by white people. Where's the discourse about white on white crime? Oh my God, the white family is going to hell in a handbasket, doing meth, making shows like Breaking Bad. Right? Where is the pathologization and demonization of white folk to the same degree that black or brown folk get it? So let's be real about what we're dealing with here, my brothers and sisters. Crime happens where people live. If you want integrated killing, you have to have integrated communities. The point is, we want to stop the killing, period. And we know that our precious police lives risk themselves daily to put an end to some of the vicious genocide we see going on in our neighborhoods. They risk their lives, and we ought to be honest about that. But we want the police to understand that they cannot criminalize every person of color. Right? There's a balance. I have been mistreated by the police. I ain't never committed no crime in my life. Well, not one that I got caught for. But what I'm saying, oh my God, I hope the statute of limitations is out up here. I'm just joking, sirs and ma'ams. I've committed no crime. Right? I ain't committed no crime. In Detroit, stopped by the police when I was young. I understand, stop me. But then don't take it extra. It's the extra stuff that gets problematic. Dehumanizing me, removing my humanity. Stuff you wouldn't do to your mama. Stuff you wouldn't do to your own people. If you wouldn't do it to them, don't do it to me. That's the basic problem. At the same time, we know we got some crazy cousins. And sometimes somebody needs to put them in order because the society refuses to acknowledge their problems, and as a result of that, it dumps them on our police forces. So we have to be honest about the balance. But what I look around and I see the disproportionate number of black and brown people being murdered, killed, stopped, policed, over-policed, racially profiled, that's a problem. Most people in America who do drugs ain't people of color, right? By self-reporting, white brothers and sisters do as many drugs as black people and brown people, and sometimes even more. It stands to reason. If you have a higher disposable income, you have more money for recreational drugs. It's one of the American dreams. Just joking, just joking. I just want them to know. I am not promoting any ingestion of foreign or toxic forces, although I know police people may sometimes enjoy them themselves. I mean recreational, of course, but medicinal marijuana is what I'm speaking of. My point is simply this. If the self-reporting of many white brothers and sisters is they do as many drugs, how come as many of them in prison or in jail as black brothers and brown brothers and sisters? We need the police to tell the truth about that. There is a culture within police departments. You talking about no snitching? You tell American citizens not to snitch? Police don't snitch on each other either, right? They got a no snitch rule too. So if no snitching is good for the community, it ought to be good for the police as well. We need to all abide by the same rules of no snitching. Now it's tragic when you in Chicago and your child is murdered, execution style, because you're in one game and the person who killed them is in another. And the police come ask you what you know and you don't know nothing. We are doing ourselves in too. We are undermining ourselves too. So it's a both and. Why can't we get this message? Why can't we get the message that when some white guy is drunk, he will not be usually killed? He will not be run off the road. He will not be maced. He will not be tasered. And yet a person of color with mouth. It's not against the law to run your mouth, even though I would recommend. Don't be crazy with it now. It ain't against the law, but it might be against common sense to save you a butt whipping, right? Because police people are human too. You know if somebody talks trash to you, you'll be like, really? See me outside at 3 o'clock. I'm going to have to holler at you. Now, we know that having a police badge and gun means you have the imprimatur and the official symbol of the state. You ought to act even more reasonably and responsibly than usual citizens do, because that's your job. But at the same time, we must show respect and appreciation for officials of the state who are in our communities who act with respect toward us. All we want is Aretha Franklin to prevail. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Don't ask me to get off the road by calling me the N-word. We know police do that. Stop lying. We know what happens in communities. We know police people who are black hear white police people use the N-word against some aggressive young black person and don't check them. Now, the reason they don't check them is because that white police officer may be over them, and if they turn them in and report them to the authorities, they will face the consequences. Can we tell the truth today? So let's not act like some black police people are also intimidated as well. But at the same time, respect should go both ways. We should respect officials of the state as they respect our humanity. If you ask me to move off the street, I ought to move if you ask me with respect and dignity. But don't disrespect and dehumanize me and humiliate me. My brothers and sisters, if we're going to have serious conversations and honest conversations, I have participated in conversations with Chief Bratton in New York City about this, about racial profiling, about if your young white children were being killed at the same rate, would you accept this as business as usual? Would you say that's just what happens? You ought to obey the police? No. You would challenge them. If a disproportionate number of young white kids were being killed, shot, murdered, disrespected, dehumanized, this would not be accepted. This would not be seen as business as usual. So don't expect black and brown people to accept that either. Still, at the same time, most people of color are taught tremendous respect for the authorities. We hear a police, we get scared. We drive in the speed limit. Oh my God, there's a police person. Let me slow down. I'm going 20, let me go 15. But it's a 30 mile, I don't care. Now that's most Americans. Most Americans scared of the police, but we got some extra scaredness for good reason. We leave our homes in Chicago going to Texas to get a job. Our name is Sandra Bland. 3 days later, we end up dead. Now, whether or not she killed herself in the jail, I'm not saying that's irrelevant, but I'm asking why she in jail in the first place for not doing that, right? And I'm saying as well, when Walter Scott in South Carolina gets out and runs from the police. Now that's crazy, but it might make sense to him because he don't want to be another statistic. And what happens? Officer Slager extracts his gun and shoots him several times in the back. This is unacceptable in America. This is unacceptable because with the badge and the gun, you cannot legitimate and justify your impulse to do harm. On the other hand, how many of those police officers, for no other reason that they are police officers, get nastiness and viciousness too? And I don't mean primarily in African American and Latino communities, in the dominant community. If there was a war on the police, there have been many white people who have killed police execution style because they're mad at the state, because they're mad at the guns that the state has and wants to take from them. Nobody said there was a war on police. When the last 8 or 9 people who were white executed police officers, there was no language of war on the police, but Black Lives Matter simply wants to defend themselves and say to America, stop doing this to us, and all of a sudden there's a war on police. No. The real war happens among those many and often white Americans who think that the state has overrun its authority and as a result of that seek to execute police in the prosecution of their war against the state. That is fundamentally un-American, problematic, and evil, and yet it never gets called out as such. Cliven Bundy in Nevada had his guys, because of grazing fees, use guns to hold off the authorities. That is more detrimental to our society and subversive and disloyal than most of what happens in black and brown communities. But it did not get framed that way. And so as I end, my brothers and sisters, what am I asking? I'm asking for the respect of all lives. I'm saying that all lives, black or brown, red or yellow, poor or rich, police, people, or civilian, should be respected, should be protected, should be acknowledged. And at the end of the day, you and I, as participants in the modern American democracy, should defend the lives of the vulnerable, even as we defend the right of respectful police forces to deal with the resources they have to keep in check the lethal spread of genocidal crime. But at the same time, people of color and others have a right to exist in a culture without the undue harm visited upon them by out-of-control police forces. When we bring that conversation in one room, when we tell the truth about the situation we confront, then the cradle of America, e pluribus unum, out of many one, can live, and we can enjoy each other as equal participants in the great pageant of American democracy. Thank you so very much.
Thank you again, Dr. Dyson. Were you not enriched? Now I want you to put on your thinking caps, get your questions together. We want you to come to the mic and freely take your questions. Not just yet, we're gonna cue you in time. I want you to get it prepared. I don't want you up here umming and stumbling. That was a joke. Do want to, I don't know if they were mentioned before as I was moving about, but I want to thank Brother Robert Delancey. Where's Brother Robert at? He had to leave. And Dr. Daphne Cooper came in. She was such a wonderful help. She came on. Sister Phyllis brought her, stand up, Daphne. Dr. Daphne. Sister Phyllis brought her on, and she was quite helpful, and I'm thankful for her participation. And I agree with the professor. The attorneys do look like fashion models. And on that note, we're going to bring back our host, sponsor, Jean Law Scott. Give her a hand as she comes.
Thank you, Reverend, and thank you, Dr. Dyson. Thank you so very much for coming and setting and starting our entire forum here today. We are so very fortunate. Let's just give Dr. Dyson one more hand. Dr. Dyson is right, all Black lives matter, and we do need to stop the killing, period. And we must accept that the killing of our children is just unacceptable. So we want to start that dialogue here today. If you look at your program here, and we have a panel discussion, we have our law enforcement, we have our state representatives. We would be remiss if we did not at this time also introduce one of our forum panelists, Attorney Pam Booker. She is the current city attorney for the city of Port St. Lucie, formerly the senior assistant city attorney from 2007 to 2014. She completed her undergraduate studies at the University of Florida with a BS in finance, and her Juris Doctorate in law also from the University of Florida in 1994. Ms. Booker serves as the board member for Pace Center for Girls of the Treasure Coast, and she is the mother of 2 lovely daughters. Again, we have our attorney, Pam Booker. We also are very, very fortunate to have with us the Palm Beach County Commissioner, Ms. Priscilla Taylor. Would you please stand? If you don't know, you need to know that she is running for Patrick Murphy's seat. So please, please, we need to unite and come together and make sure that she is our next representative for the House of Representatives. Now, as we stated, we want to talk about racism and its effect on the African-American community. So we have note cards, and I'm going to ask Ms. Kelly, if you need a note card, please take the time to really flesh out your question. If you'd like, you can come up to the mic, or we can take that question and we can read it and then have our discussion that way. So we would ask, if you do have questions, to form a line here, no more than 3 or 5 in line at the time. I think that would make it a little bit easier. And then we're just going to, start this frank debate, discussion, and have your questions answered. That's the reason why we're all here. Because we talk about it in our kitchens, we talk about it at the barbershop or the hair salon, but we really need to have our questions answered. And we need to have a discussion about what we can do to better our community. What strategies can we develop here today that we can take with us to formulate for tomorrow? The other thing is, we don't need to be reactive. Let's be proactive. And this is a great opportunity. So I ask you, if you have a question, let's start now.
How you doing? My question is, how do we address the disconnect between the African American community and law enforcement?
That's a great, is it on? Okay. That's a great question, and something I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of studying on. And Port St. Lucie is a unique community, and I'll be honest, I have worked for the last 28 years in law enforcement in Port St. Lucie. So if you're from a big city and you have a different experience in Port St. Lucie or St. Lucie County, I am very naive when it comes to law enforcement in larger cities or in different communities, because my education in that area only comes from reading or from what I see on the news. But Port St. Lucie is a very unique community in that it is very integrated. We do not have communities that are separated by, really, there is a little bit of separation by socioeconomic, because we have some more affluent gated communities. But when you get out into what I call Port St. Lucie proper, where I live, the communities are all very, very integrated. So we don't have pockets of different races or different ethnicities in Port St. Lucie. And I think that creates a situation where the police officers interact a little bit differently, because they're working in a community where people seem that their neighbors are different ethnicities, and it's just a little more integrated. But what I've read about the disconnect between policing and different ethnicities is the training. We've heard a lot about bias training. We've heard a lot about racial sensitivity training. But those when they do research on that type of training, that training lasts a very short period of time, and then people go back to their normal set of biases and prejudice that makes them who they are. I'll tell you right now, I'm sitting right here in front of you. I'm not colorblind. Okay, that's something I had to address very early in my life in law enforcement, and be aware that I do see different people differently, and that is something I need to address. And so we try to teach that to the officers. But if every one of you in the crowd today, if you think about it, we're not colorblind. Okay, what we have to do is we have to overcome our biases and our own prejudices, and so we try to teach that in law enforcement. But what we're learning from research is that training only lasts a very short amount of time. What they're finding is working together to solve problems in the long run makes all the difference in the world. When you put a team of people together, regardless of how different they are, and they accomplish something, they will always be part of that team, and they will always work together to look forward to solving other problems. So I think the concept of community policing that was so popular back in the 1980s and seemed to have slid off when we got into intelligence-led policing and data-driven policing needs to come back to policing, and that's something we concentrate on in Port St. Lucie, is working together with the community to solve problems. And whether you do that in committees, or you do that in neighborhoods, or you do that as part of a very small team just dealing with one specific problem, I think that is the key to reconnect. The police officers are part of the community. They can't solve all the problems of the community by themselves. You know, we have one police officer, or 1.2 police officers for every 1,000 people here in Port St. Lucie. So they're not going to be able to solve all the problems. The community has got to use us as an instrument and work with us to solve the problems.
I think so I want to make 2 points to that question that you asked. I think it's a very potent question. Point number one is that the training that the chief talks about, I think the only issue with that is that there are certain trainings and exposure that a person should go through before they get a badge and a gun. All right, and so while they're at the academy, there are certain programs that could be implemented into the curriculum. I think that is dictated by Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And so I know that we've tried a few years back to at least have a community service element as a required portion of the curriculum. So officers or cadets that are seeking to be police officers, they're going into the communities prior to getting that badge and gun and serving people, you know, whether it's at a homeless shelter, whether it's at a drug treatment facility or wherever, and getting to know the people in that community before they even get a badge and a gun. That's number one. But number two, and I think it's very critical in light of the discussions that have been going on throughout the country. I believe that there is a critical element that's missing when you're talking about a relationship between law enforcement and the community. Most attention is being placed on elected officials, primarily the mayor, or they're being placed on the chief of police. Now, what's that element that's missing and that's extremely crucial? Rank and file. Police unions. Because what I can say that probably some people can't say, all right, is that the police unions have considerable influence over policy decisions in the department and in the mayor's office. At the end of the day, the mayor is going to need the police union more than he needs the police chief when he seeks to get reelected. And the police chief can have the best ideas in the world, but if he does not have support with that union, it's not going down. And we've seen that, even the reaction of the union in New York. And so I believe that if you really want to improve relationship between the community and law enforcement, then police unions must be at the table, and there have to be some kind of commonality, some kind of common ground that is reached here before we can move forward.
Before we go on to the next question, I'd like to hear also from from Chief Deputy Gary Wilson, if you could discuss or expound upon that, sir, with regard to the relationship between the law enforcement and the community.
Well, I think that Chief Bulldog hit on an awful lot of the important points, and the question that was asked is very broad in nature as far as how to build that relationship and build that sense of cooperation. And gatherings like this are a step in that direction. And I think here in St. Lucie County, we have a very good mechanism to try and interact and solve problems with programs like our Executive Roundtable and our Children's Services Council and entities like that to open doors for communication between all residents of St. Lucie County and try to address these issues before they become blown out of proportion or exaggerated across the county. And I think we have done here in St. Lucie County, between the community and law enforcement and government, a pretty good job of trying to bridge that divide and have open communications with our community and work on those things when those things are occurring and try to deal with them on the front side.
Thank you. House Representative Mary Lee.
I'll be brief, but I just want to reflect back on something that Dr. Dyson said, and that's community policing. I think that's the key, and they need to get out of the cars and get out into the community more to let the people see other than them as a police officer, but also as an individual and a person, a father, a husband, a mother. And I also like to acknowledge something that Scott Van Duzer and I are doing. Scott came up with this idea called First Step. And we all talk about how we need to come together as a community, come together as a people to make our community and our country better. But we talk, we never take that first step. So over the past 5 weeks, what Scott has organized over in Northwest Fort Pierce, which is one of the most crime-ridden areas, right in the housing project, every Tuesday night, he has coordinated the Fort Pierce Police Department. And even though the city of Port St. Lucie is on the southern end of the county, even the Port St. Lucie Police Department participates, the fire department. We come out there with these kids in the housing project, and we provide youth activities for about an hour and a half. We're there, and everybody knows that Scott owns Big Apple's Pizza, so he uses pizza to entice the kids to come. And they for about 20 minutes, they play, they talk, we started reading, and now even the parents are coming. But who's there? The police officers are there in their uniforms, the firefighters are there, and these parents and these kids are getting to know them because they're doing this on their own time. But that's the key. They got to get out there more, and we need more activities like that. But we need everybody to take that first step.
And Chief Deputy Armando, if you would.
I think there's a lot of excellent points. I would agree with Representative Lee and Dr. Dyson when we mentioned community-oriented policing, but I think that we need to take a stronger look at it. The chief also mentioned about training. I think that's where ultimately community policing had failed. We trained, but we didn't continue to train. And that's something that we constantly have to do. As society changes, we need to take a different approach. And I like what Scott Van Duzer is doing and what Mr. Meade had said. It's a question of the police department or law enforcement officers showing a different side. It's a very traumatic experience whenever you call 911 and you need a law enforcement officer. Usually it is a crisis mode. So you see a police officer in a different sense. You don't see him as maybe a human being. So that's why I like the first step approach in what we're doing at the police department as well. We have enacted something called the front porch roll call, where we get out in our community. It's not that someone has called for the police department, but we take a proactive approach and we're out in our community and they see our police officers in a different light. And the police officer at the same time sees our citizens at a different light as well. Because you know, there's a frame of mind for a police officer whenever they're responding to a call, you know, because they have a heightened sense. They don't know what they're walking into. So we see our citizens in a different vein as well. So I think stuff like First Step or our front porch roll call or socials, ice cream socials that the Sheriff's Department and Fort Pierce Police Department have done as well. You know, those are things that bridge that gap that will bring us together in a different light.
Thank you very much. Our next question.
This is a tall microphone. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as I listen to the comments being made today, and thank you, Dr. Dyson. I am a fan, have all of your books. in light of that, if you can take yourselves back to the 70s, and there was an era that was prominent in the black community called the blaxploitation era. And a lot of things that were perpetuated for black men, we were characterized as pimps, pushers, players, and everything that was derogative. And as I think about and see Black Lives Matter now, Curtis Mayfield made a song, I'm so glad I have my own, so glad that I can see my life's a natural high. The man can't put nothing on me. And a lot of people today here in 2015, they view people who are elected officials and chief of police officers and mayors who happen to be white as the man. So my question to you all, in 2015, getting ready to go into 2016, how do we rid ourselves of that, the man stigma that still follows us today? Because everyone up here is educated, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 black men up there, but you all are still grouped in with the dopes, pushers, and players because of what happens when you're pulled over, because you don't walk around with those titles on you. And we are viewed as, you all are, and I'm just keeping it real, as the man. Stop me when I'm lying.
Well,
anybody chime in on that, please?
Well, I know that in my experience in law enforcement, which is zero, and I'll speak very briefly, but let's be honest about it. You made a very interesting point, but there was police brutality before blaxploitation movies. So not to negate your point you just made in terms of the cultural articulation of a certain kind of authentic black thug player and so on. Those things are often in response to the denial of opportunity. Even the political economy of the underground was predicated upon not having availability of employment that everybody else had access to, right? I'm not trying to justify, right, underground economies. I'm trying to explain them. And so the prevalence of ideas about black identity go back to slave culture. Go back to when you had a bad Negro and the good Negro. The good Negro was docile and deferential. The bad Negro was rebellious and irreverent. So when you think about these types, the bad Negro type that you're speaking about that gets deeply ingrained in the culture, it's not simply white police officers who have to be concerned about it, it's black people too. Black people have unconsciously internalized the same kinds of vicious self-portraits of ourselves, which end up being stereotypes and caricatures. So I think one of the most important things I heard today here was when the chief said that he is not colorblind. Thank God. The ideal should not be to be colorblind, right? Very important. I don't want you to be blind to my color. I don't want you to I'm a black man. I've been majoring in blackness for 57 years. I can't change my major right now, right? The point is, I want you to get over what you think about my blackness. It's not my blackness. So when the chief, I'm so glad he said it. So, because many well-intending white brothers and sisters, I don't see that you're a Negro. I don't see, okay, that's a joke, though. You can laugh, all right? I don't see that you're black. I don't see that you're African-American. Yeah, I want you to see that. I see that you're white. I see you're Latino. I see you're Native American. I just want to get past the bigotry that clouds what I believe. And both chiefs and the assistant chief, I think, are very honest about talking about rooting this in our communities when we know each other better. When we feel it, I think this is a brilliant idea, as the representative has done with the pizza place. I'd like some of that pizza this morning. So the having the pizza place eating associated with police people who may either be serving or talking, can you imagine now the police person sees the community differently, the community sees the police person differently, and then there's a connection forged. It's harder to shoot somebody with whom you've had some intimate contact, except if you're married to him. So what I'm saying, okay. Okay, that's tough. That's tough. That's tough. And believe it or not, many people who hurt each other are hurting people they know. Right? I'm joking, but really telling the truth there. So the tragedy is that we don't learn each other more, and then we see the police person, as he said, as a human being. not a deliverer of resources immediately or primarily, but also as a human being with a father who wants to go home or a mother who wants to go home to their family and be loved and cherished the same way. So I acknowledge your point about black exploitation. I just doubt the degree to which the currency of pop culture, which re-articulates a conception of black men as a certain narrow thing, it certainly has a play, but I think it pre-existed what we see going on in the pop culture now. The greatest black film and the highest grossing black film ever now is what? Straight Outta Compton. Straight Outta Compton is about black, the relationship of black communities to the police, but also the vicious carnage of our own communities right there. Both of them are powerfully represented there, and I think we need a both and, not an either or kind of approach to that. That would be my 2 cents.
I have a broader statement and a question. My broader statement, I also want to, okay, all right, is that better? Okay. Okay, thank you. Also, too, I want to share with the panel that we have a group from Riviera Beach. We have citizens for Riviera Beach. So we speak about Port St. Lucie, but we have some folks that come from very far. If I can get you to raise your hand. So we brought some people all the way from the Palm Beach County area. My broader statement is developing youth leadership to become prepared and strategically and tactically engage on a local and state, community, political, and sometimes and justice level. We need to start developing our youth to be prepared for working in those dynamics. And so my question is, how do we begin to, from where I come from, Detroit, Michigan, and we dealt with this in Detroit, where we didn't have police officers who looked like the community. And at that time, the mayor invoked a program where he recruited men and women of different colorful backgrounds to begin to participate in the police department and other factions of police authority. And how do we get to that point of getting our youth prepared to become police officers? That's my question. And it can come from Mr. Dyson, Mr. Lee, and the police department as well.
Well, also, I think that's a good question for Dr. Huey, who is the IRSC Dean of Minority Affairs, because he's working right with our youth. So I think that's a really good, of course we'll have more, weigh in, but I'd like to hear from Dr. Huey.
Well, and I was only born in the mid-'70s, so I couldn't help you with the blaxploitation. I think what we have to do is have more people that look like the youth in these areas, right? So what I'm doing at Indian River State College is working on a college-wide equity program where we actually show our students that it is possible for them to be like me, right? So what we need to do is give them these examples, give them opportunities, equitable opportunities, right? And we also have to build relationships with folks. And if we don't build these relationships, they don't see these connections and how it's important for them to become police officers so they can go back to their own communities and serve their own communities. So we work with a lot of the youth, and we have programs where we show our youth that they can be educated, that they can succeed, even though they've been told that they can't succeed, right? So when I saw this question about racism and its effect on the African American community, I thought about it, and I said, I can talk about the theoretical aspects of it, right? But practically, racism is you believing that you are not good, even though you may be the best person in the room, right? And it's also slowly killing yourself trying to make these things possible. So what we have to do is encourage our youth, put them in these situations where they see people like themselves, so that they can know that they can make a difference.
Okay. Mr. Stone?
You know, I'll go back to the first question that was asked in terms of how do you build the relationship between the law enforcement and the community. I think you have to have diversity in the department. And law enforcement officers and the chiefs of police, they have a very difficult job because we first have to get qualified individuals, young black men who are qualified for the position to then apply in order to create that diversity in the community. But when we talk about the education part, we've got to start in middle school and early in high school, because they need to understand that if you get arrested for stealing a bag of potato chips, you now have a petty theft on your record, and if the chief of police has an opportunity to choose you or somebody else who doesn't have a record, they're going to choose that other person. So your criminal record is going to disqualify you from positions in the public. I think we need to start in the school system and explaining that to the youth so that they are clear that any type of arrest will affect you long term. Florida, we have the privilege to seal and expunge those records, but there are still governmental agencies who can have access to that. So that's where I think the problem is, because if I have a theft or a grand theft of a motor vehicle in high school, it's in my youth. But if I'm prosecuted as an adult, it's going to stay on my record, and I'll never get a job as a law enforcement officer. So we've got to start very early in the schools, in my opinion.
And can I say an excellent point, and that reinforces the necessity of getting rid of the bias in our society, because there should be a lot more young white kids with felonies on their records too, right? I mean, that's the point. And the tragedy is, the speaker is absolutely right. That doesn't justify, therefore, what we should go out and do and engage in criminal activity. The fact is, the decks are stacked against you from the very beginning, because the Amnesty International did a report nearly 20 years ago that said the same offenses that lead young white kids to be spanked or hit on the back of the hand and say, "Johnny, don't do that again," black and brown kids are sent to detention, which is a feeder to jail, which becomes a warehouse unto prison. It's not that black people are morally, and I think we have to be very careful here, they're not morally different than white brothers and sisters. They're in a situation where they're being seen and judged differently. So we want to do both. I think we need to be bifocal. What the gentleman just said is absolutely right. We have to be very circumspect, and we have to examine our own practices and behavior, and at the same time we need to pay attention to balancing the books so that black and brown kids don't disproportionately get put in situations where they get a record and therefore are unable later on in their lives to become a police person, or for that matter, even to vote. I think it's a both and, not an either or.
You know, one of the things that I think is a problem, of course, building relationships is, to me, the key. And I also believe firmly that 98% of the people in our communities, and it doesn't matter to me what color, what neighborhood, or those things, 98% of the people who live in our communities are law-abiding, good people who just want to live in peace in their neighborhoods and coexist with their neighbors and throughout their community. And one of the things that I think hampers this effort is our media and the way that they highlight the different things that go on in our communities. The three chiefs up here on regular occasions meet with youth leaderships throughout the year to talk about what we do and talk about law enforcement. And these are some of the best and the brightest kids of all shapes and sizes, all colors, all religions. This is a good cross-section of our community. And we go to Eagle Scout Awards and different events that take place around the community. Never do you see the media highlighting those children, those kids that are doing great things in our community, but they don't get the recognition. What the media highlights on is the shootings and the drug dealing and those types of things. And a lot of that goes to the questions that were asked about the things of back in the 70s. Those were the things that drew everybody's attention. Those were the things that brought a lot of that out. Here in St. Lucie County, prior to the downturn in our economy, which affected everybody across the country, we had a very strong representation of school resource deputies and officers in our schools. And the relationships that those officers forged with young people in the school system just went away because they didn't have that opportunity to interact with the children on a different level. Speaking in front of the class about safety and bike safety and why you should wear a bike helmet or wear a seatbelt and things like that. We lost that because what did we cut when the budgets got tight? We cut those programs and focused on law enforcement and patrolling the neighborhoods and things like that. And those relationships that have been built, again, we haven't seen those. When a police officer just walking a beat or being out in the community is approached by children that he met in the 2nd and 3rd grade, and it was Officer John, Officer Mike, or Officer Buddy, and those relationships go on forever and ever and ever. We need to do a better job of being out and interactive with our community. But at the same time, it would be real nice if the media would focus on a lot of the stuff that is being done in this community that is positive and good for the community, especially in our young people that don't get the recognition that they deserve.
Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. The question I have is one that I've been struggling with, not only here in my local community, but as I travel the United States. I'm a consultant and I work in hundreds of cities across the United States. And when I see communities where the economy has been eroded by globalization, and even here locally with immigration, because I work with welfare reform, and I saw, African American women in the 90s and 80s being displaced from the jobs that they used to go back to, because I don't have a problem with other folks coming here, but other folks came, began to work the crops, and we saw displacement. And so what I'm looking at now, and it ties together a lot of the things that you're seeing and saying, when you talk about community policing, for example, community policing requires relationship building. But if you have law enforcement officers that are underpaid, and then they get attracted somewhere else because the economy can't pay for the police officers here, they go to Martin County or go work somewhere else because they can't stay here. Or if we have African American males that can't find jobs in the city, to be able to get a decent job, like our past generation, our fathers, we would see our fathers go to work, even if it was blue-collar jobs. My question, as I'm scratching my head, is when I go on the internet and try to work with communities, I notice that our communities in the United States, you'll see models in Europe and other places, it is devoid of any strategic addressing of the globalization and economic deprivation that's in our communities that's plaguing a lot of those issues. So my question would be, even to Dr. Dyson and anybody else, what are some strategies that communities are beginning to do collectively to begin looking at how can we deal with the economic structure that's going on and begin creating employment, better employment for the people that are in our communities, being able to staff and reduce the turnover rate, if you will, with law enforcement? What are some strategies that not programmatic, what are some strategic, at the strategic level that we can do to begin looking at that collectively so that we can have collective impact from the top to the bottom? That's my question.
Excellent question.
Yes, man, that's a very sophisticated question right there. Because it involves, it rightly puts policing in the midst of, as I heard one of our fellow police officers and chiefs say, within the economic flow of the broader community, the downturn in the economy. Well, that had global impact and local consequence. Because when you talk about a shift from manufacturing to service industries, where before, when you say your father, my father from Detroit, Michigan, right, worked in the automobile industry, but when brawn and strength gave way to automated technology, the steel collar, the rapid proliferation of technology and knowledge economies meant that people are left behind because they're not getting retrained. So in terms of not a program, but a strategy, one strategy is retraining, right? But retraining rests upon an economic imperative that inspires people to want to become participants in a local economy where they feel that they have some purchase. When you have governors of states turning back Medicaid money, I don't even want to go there. Yeah, I'm just saying. Then you know that's not merely a problem, right, that can be solved at the local level. And when President Obama keeps saying, and people don't hear, oh, you expect the police basically to be like magical angels who come in and resolve every problem. Look at what police people face when they come to a neighborhood or to a situation. You're dealing with somebody who's probably pissed because they ain't got no job. And they're pissed because and you understand that, but they're pissed they ain't got no job. They're taking out on their wife or kid. They're drinking too much, getting high, fooling up, messing up the community. Let's be real with it, right? So now the easiest thing would be to do, to police them morally. But no, what we understand is that these broader global shifts, manufacturing, the service industries, the jobs go out to the suburbs. The transportation system goes out to the suburbs. So people left in inner cities can't even get no cab, can't get no Uber. I'm just saying, I don't want to go there, right? So now you're left with a lacuna, a gulf and a gap in terms of transportation. The economic system benefits those who are highly educated and those who are educated specifically towards STEM, right? We know that STEM now is big. That's why you want to get your kids involved there. But folk who are in a knowledge economy are making dough. Service industries, if you happen to be on the high end of that service versus the low end, McDonald's workers are service industries too. They don't have full-time work. They don't get benefits. So when they flip your fries, don't be wondering why they mad. They mad because they ain't got no, dang, can you treat me better? Can I get treated better, right? So all of that to suggest that the economic issues you're speaking about, one strategy is retraining, another strategy is local economic development, because we know that especially for communities of color, local entrepreneurs represent the largest face of the interface between business and local economies. It's through people with small businesses. So to develop those in terms of economic development, in terms of empowerment zones, in terms of that. And then finally, let's be honest, we have to figure out a way. You want to talk about a strategy? Vote. Right, now let me tell you what that is. Let me tell you why that is important. Let me tell you why that's important. Right now, in Cleveland, Ohio, a prosecutor, similar to Prosecutor Bob McCullough, in Ferguson, Mr. McGinty, a year and so after Tamir Rice was murdered, was killed, they have not yet submitted this to a grand jury. Now, the police deserve their day in court like people who have been offended by the police, ostensibly, deserve their day in court. But when you suspend the process, when it's so obvious that you are biased and refusing to defend the people who you have been elected to defend, that at that level it becomes problematic. So I say vote. It ain't just about Obama or Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump or Ben Carson. It's about local elections where local officials are hired to represent your interests.
Absolutely right.
So I like to follow up on that and bring it home a little closer to home. In the state of Florida, almost 2 million people cannot vote because of a prior felony conviction. 1 out of every 4 African-American male falls into that category, and it's a growing amount of African-American women who are also losing the right to vote. Now, what does that mean? It means, I'm going to attack it on 2 angles. Number one is that when you look at African-American community and you can see that 1/3 of that community can't even vote to begin with, and then the remaining 2/3, maybe 8% show up to vote. As an elected official, when I look at your community, I say that you can't put me in office, nor can you take me out. So why should I care about your economic development? Why should I care about the quality of your schools? Or why should I care about your sons or daughters dying in the street and being left there like animals? But yet, if I look at the other neighborhoods and I see that the majority of those people can vote and they have the resources to help me do my most important task, which is to get reelected, then let a puppy die in their street, and I'm holding a press conference that same day, saying that this has to stop. And when we can take a group of ministers to the White House and have the Obama administration tell us that, while the tragedy at Sandy Hook was great, we can't really address urban gun violence because there's not enough political capital to deal with African American issues. All right, it's very telling. that as you're stripping away, because felon disenfranchisement was originally intended to remove African Americans from the political process anyhow. Right. And so as you're removing this process from the communities in the state of Florida, then guess what's happening? If you go to South Florida in Miami, you're seeing gentrification at its finest. If you go into Orlando, you're seeing gentrification at its finest. And if you have a keen eye, you know what's getting ready to go down in Okeechobee, Pahokee, and Belgrades. And so that, the only way, as far as when you're talking about politically, that you can get re-engaged is to actually re-enfranchise individuals. Dr. Dyson said, go and vote. But I'm going to tell you something. It's hard. Back in the days, the African-American family, voting was an event. It was something that was celebrated. But if the man of the house can't vote, if the preacher can't vote, he ain't telling his congregation to go out and vote. Let's keep it real. But the other aspect of that is in 2011, Florida Parole Commission came out with a study, and what they looked at was this. They looked at a little over 30,000 individuals, convicted felons, whose rights were restored. At that time in 2011, Florida had a recidivism rate of 33.1%. That meant that out of every 100 people that were released from prison, 33 would reoffend and go back in prison within that year. When they looked at individuals in 2009 and 2010 whose rights were restored, the recidivism rate was reduced from 33.1 to 11.4%. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that 27,000 out of those 30,000 people did not commit another offense, but they also represented over $545 million that the state of Florida did not have to spend to incarcerate. Now, I'm just talking about incarceration, not the cost of investigation where they commit an offense, or the cost of prosecution where they get caught. Incarceration alone commanded a budget of over $545 million, which is a budget that's larger than the largest city in the state of Florida. If you remember, and I'm pretty sure the chiefs can attest to this, is that same year that 27,000 people could command a budget of over $545 million, cities throughout the state of Florida was forcing police unions back to the collective bargaining table to renegotiate their agreements because cities just didn't have the money to pay our police officers, our firefighters. They didn't have the money, but the money was there. What a lot of people are not talking about is that the money is spent in incarcerating people. When the state of Florida that year had a budget of $18,000 to incarcerate each individual, and that same year, within the budget, they only allocated $3,500 to educate a child, you knew what their priorities were. So when you talk about economics, when you talk about building up the economy in the minority communities, you got to look at it from both ends. First of all, we've got to be more civically empowered, but on the other end, we have to be able to find ways to reallocate money that typically go to incarceration, right, and reallocate it to education, reallocate it to public safety, reallocate it to parks and welfare.
Because we are really low on time, I'm going to ask this gentleman to ask his question. Then I'm going to change the panel because we have Dr. Dyson that's got to leave. I'm going to bring Dr. Dyson up again, but go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you all for being here, and thank everybody in the audience for being here. You mentioned a question a minute ago about the policeman when he goes out on a call. He's high on alert, not quite sure what he's going to walk into. From my point of view, so are we. We know you have a gun. And we don't always have one. I don't personally. Talk about different things in the how you're going to improve stuff. The question is, how many minorities do you have on your force? Where do you stand with those kind of things? And I'm going to make it simple. I'm going to present you with the sheriff's deputy there with a Florida Sunshine request. I'll be requesting 50 files of your employees until we go through the whole file for criminal activity and minority hiring. I want to know the percentages. That keeps my conversation short. And we're going to put the ball back in your court, and you're going to protect us, and you're going to give us the files. Thank you, sir.
Well, that is a good question. What is the diversity percentage on the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Department?
Right off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but we are required to report those numbers to the state and the federal government on a regular basis. And we are pretty much equally diverse across the agency based on the population and the people that we serve. But I do not know those numbers and can get those numbers.
What about the city of Port St. Lucie?
I too can't just pull that number right off the top of my head, but I can tell you that over the course of the last 3 years, we have had a percentage swing towards more Hispanic and more African American police officers, and more females too. In my career, I have seen a major shift in females coming into police work, and we have implemented specific diversity recruiting plans that we're both accredited through the state of Florida and internationally through CALEA, and we have to submit a recruiting plan for approval to those two accreditation bodies, and there's a lot of work to be done there. And you know, we look at things like how can we make our Police Explorer program more attractive to minorities so they get that early introduction to policing, and we're looking at a lot of different angles, but I agree, we need to make the departments more representative of the community.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this fine panel to step down. Ms. Booker, I'm sorry, I was going to ask if you could stay. Okay, all right, then that's fine. Dr. Dyson, we're going to bring you back up.
Thank you, Attorney. I want to admit that I stole a blue pen up here. I just want to taking it with me. I hope it's not a problem. But look, this is incredible, right? This is the kind of honesty that is demanded if we are to be serious about having conversations. We have to push police forces to think critically, and police forces demand that we think also critically about the situation in which we discover ourselves. It won't always be comfortable, but it has to be honest. Honesty is rarely something that's convenient. And so when we talk about some of the issues we've spoken about today, look and don't underestimate the breadth and depth from the conversation about re-entering people into our society and how we have systematically disenfranchised African American and brown people in this country. Whether, you know, one speaks about that as intentional or not, it seems to be intentional in terms of the consequences that have been assigned to the people who are seen as problematic. On the other hand, we know that there's a corollary to above board but political shenanigans that have been introduced, voter ID and the like, to systematically disenfranchise the same population. So it does make you ask a serious question about the degree to which that is the intent of our practices. But beyond that, this morning, speaking honestly and openly about color blindness and the need to transcend color blindness, to be conscious of people's color, but not to assign negative value automatically to that, or gender, or race, or sexual orientation, to be honest about engaging the issues in our community that need to be addressed in terms of the economic downturn, in terms of the shift from manufacturing to service industries, in terms of the need for retraining, also the economic exigency that poor communities face, and at the same time, to ask striking questions of our police people about the numbers, whether or not these chiefs have those numbers here today, to get them and us thinking about what kind of people are on the force, what are they doing and saying, can we take advantage of the intelligence, the strategic thinking, and the practices of police people who happen to be people of color who do not necessarily resort to extreme violence in order to negotiate or resolve a conflict. And if we can teach that to our police people. Now, one of the chiefs at least is honest in saying that, look, that training wears off. So-called making, diversity training wears off. But what won't wear off is bringing in a battalion of different people to play in the broader sandbox of our policing in local communities. When we get more minority people in, that's not automatic, because we know some of the most vicious carriers of a particular virus happen to be the community affected by that virus. So we know that just having more black policemen won't automatically resolve the problem if indeed their mindset is one that is not as enlightened as some perhaps of their other white brothers and sisters. The question is, how do we get enlightened about policing in America that is indeed community-based? Think about what goes on in Baltimore. When police people coming in who live in Delaware come into Baltimore, they're living in nice communities in Delaware, they're living in communities that are protected, they're living in the communities with a higher tax base, so that they take away from the tax base of the communities that they police by not recirculating their tax money from the city and municipality that pays them back into the coffers. They also see these people as not their neighbors because they're not used to engaging them. And when they go into those communities, they have a bunker mentality, understandably, because they are at high alert. At any moment, something may happen to them. But as our white brother today said, so are we. We are under assault with a mismatch. Two people can be angry, but if one has a gun, it is not a fair engagement. Now, the question is, in those communities, there is tremendous and profound need at the same time, and also the manifestation of self-destruction. How do we acknowledge the political consequences of that self-destruction without demonizing the people who are there already? That's why when the sister talked about the broader economic trends, globalization with local consequence, that has to be taken into account as well. We cannot make police people, as President Obama has reminded us, the saviors and resolvers of our societal problems. On the other hand, the first people we engage with in the state often are police people, first responders, and also people with whom we interact that show the face of the state. We must therefore require, demand, request, and engage this community of police with the list of not only demands, but of requirements that all citizens should abide by, including our police people, and with the expectation that the respect that all of us deserve and desire is present as well. So when I look at what we do, and this second panel, of course, will resolve or at least acknowledge some of these problems, the reality is that we are human beings in an American culture that has an entirely unacceptable and yet undeniable legacy of inequality built into the foundation. The policing in our communities happens to reflect the deep inegalitarian character of America. The inequality is real. The racial disparity is reflective of the racial disparity in the broader society. And when our friend talked about the Obama administration, saying that Obama could go to Sandy Hook, we present you love and support. Go to places that are ravaged by hurricanes and the like, tornadoes, we present you our response. And yet, if I heard him right, when it came to urban situations in America, the Obama administration has been slow on the uptake. Now, he said, because we don't have political capital. Very important point. But also, because the suffering of black and brown people does not cry as loud in the ears of those who can hear, including a black president. That's good, I gotta leave right now, because I know some of y'all ain't feeling that. Obama done gone black now. He ain't got no choice. He got 1 year left. He's saying like, bucket, I got a bucket list. Right? Now, we're sensitive to the president. We know it was tough. Just like with the police. You roll up in a neighborhood, you the first black president, you got to be careful about what you say. You don't look like you hooking your people up. It's one thing to look like you ain't hooking your people up. It's another to leave them on the short end of the stick. Right? We want to talk about holding the police accountable. Let's hold all political figures accountable. I was twice a surrogate for Obama. In fact, the first time before he elected, I was down in the crack house in Florida. I ain't gonna tell you which one. Because of the systemic disenfranchisement that exists. And then there are some instances where people can vote, but have been told they can't vote because they've been to prison, right? That's not a universal practice, even though we need to judge the local manifestation of that. And I'm telling you that if you don't have a political leader in office, our president was scared. He was scared because the right wing was trying to hurt him. He was scared because the opposition, who was deeply racialized, was trying to hurt him. He's scared because he's in Congress. Every president, Democrat and Republican, got an automatic raise of the debt ceiling. He didn't. But if they're treating you that way, sir, and you got bodyguards, if they're treating you that way, sir, and you got a Harvard and a Columbia degree, you are twice over Ivy League. If they're treating you that way, what they doing to folk without bodyguards or folk without political capital? Now the president done caught on now. After Emmanuel 9, when he starts singing, when he started getting up into the groove, when he saw that there were deep and profound consequences to racial animosity in America, now he's talking about prison reform. Now he's speaking about policing that is fair. Now he goes to the International Association of Police Chiefs and says, hey, I got some tickets that I didn't deserve and that racial profiling is real. We already emphasized the other side. Black people and other people of color are more conscious of the law than people give us credit for. We are harder on ourselves than sometimes the police are. You come, mama, look, if you did the crime, you do the time. Go to jail, bye, holler at you when you're out. But what we don't understand is that the dominant culture that sells us that doesn't do that for their own kids. So we have to be honest about the degree to which we have bought hook, line, and sinker a law and order, if you will, ethos that is not universally acknowledged, and that all people try to expose their kids to benefits and advantages that don't subject them to the vulnerabilities of getting locked up. So the president of the United States of America was himself incarcerated in a narrow, imprisoned in a narrow box that he felt he had been consigned to. Now that he's free, I hope he gets free for all of us, because he told us often, and let me end by saying this, he said, well, I ain't the president of black America. No stuff, Sherlock. We thought you were the president of the NAACP. He didn't tell gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual people he wasn't their president, but he turned the White House rainbow colors when, and I'm glad he did, when the Supreme Court ruled. But if you ain't the president of gay and lesbian folk, and if you ain't the president of Jewish Americans and Italian Americans and other Americans, why can't you equally be the president of the people who, in one sense, disproportionately voted for you? Right? That president has a lot to do with his bully pulpit about setting the tone for how policing can occur in this country and having the courage to tell the truth. And so I hope that this president will continue, for the little
year and change he has left. Yeah, I don't expect him to come out the White House with a kufi on, although he is living in public housing. I'm done. He the most famous black man living in public housing. Huh? I wish Obama would come out sometime with a skull cap on and a terracotta robe and some tube socks and go, what's up? That's what I do. Now y'all know, I'm gonna leave here. Y'all know he was at Congress the other day and the Republicans started getting real happy when he said, I ain't got to run no more. He said, that's because I beat you twice. Okay, I'm just saying, that's what he wanted to say. So now, we've been holding white police chiefs accountable. Let's hold the black president accountable. Let's say to him, you have a moral responsibility and a political necessity to address the issues of all Americans, including African American, Latino, poor white people, and the like. Why is that? You may not be the president of Black America, but you are the president of Black Americans. Y'all get that? Huh? And all I'm saying is that when we hold him accountable and hold ourselves accountable, then we do ourselves the great service of understanding why we deserve to be treated with respect and we deserve to be treated equally in a society that doesn't often see that. God bless y'all. I'm looking forward to coming back again and speaking more with you in the future.
Again, I would like to just thank some folks that this would not have been possible. Again, we want to thank the Treasure Coast chapter of the Links Incorporated. We want to thank Fort Pierce Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We want to thank the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency. Not only did they bring folks, but they also contributed, and we just really thank you for supporting us. Also, we want to thank the Flame 104.7 FM. They were great in really getting the word out to everyone here today. We've had some individual donors, CrossFit of Jensen Beach, that's where I work out, Miriam Reed, Thelma Washington, Claudia Worley, Dr. Claire Nash, Vicki Coulter, and Tanya Bryant. We want to thank them so very much. And it's not last, definitely not least, but we could not have done this without the Grace Baptist Church, and we just thank you so very, very, very much. We also want to thank the law firm of Gary Williams Parenti, Watson and Gary. They too were wonderful contributors, and we're so happy to have Mr. Lorenzo Williams here today with us. There's a couple folks that I would like to acknowledge. We have State Representative Bobby Powell here today from West Palm Beach, and also he has been instrumental with regard to launching and ensuring that a federal investigation was launched in the death of Corey Jones. So we thank you for your service, sir. Also want to thank Tony Barnes from the city of Fort Pierce, who's also the head of the St. Lucie County NAACP. Thank you so very much. And with that, we are on to our second panel. And although we talk about some of the issues in our program, again, it's going to be driven by the questions that we have from our office participants. So we want to, of course, we want to talk about crime, our youth. It is a crisis. And so let's start having a frank dialogue with regard to that. At this point, we're going to start with whoever would like to ask a question.
Thank you. My name is Renee Parsons, and I'm president of the American Civil Liberties Society and on the Treasure Coast. And I really did want to ask this to the previous panel, but I see some of the officers are still here, so perhaps they could participate if they would be so kind as well. We have just filed, and you may have seen this in the paper down here. I don't know if it's made the press in this part of the Treasure Coast, but we have recently filed an administrative complaint with the Indian River School District for not being in compliance with their 1967 desegregation order. Can you believe that? One of the main points of that administrative complaint to the federal government has been the school-to-jail pipeline and the presence of student resource officers in the jails and the guarantee that the that those students, which came up in the previous panel, that those students then are charged with crimes that then follow them throughout their lives. And so I did want to ask and I see there are some educators on this panel, so you may want to weigh in on this as well. But I would like to ask the officers who are still here how they feel about that school-to-jail pipeline. It's really alive and well in Indian River County, and I assume it's alive and well down here as well. And the presence, what is the necessary presence for these student resource officers? It's important to know that they are police officers. They are not there to be mentors. They are not there to be counselors to students. Anything that student tells a student resource officer is possibly admissible in court, and that's really important for parents to know about that. So that's a huge issue for us, and that is a part of this administrative complaint with regard to the Indian River School District.
Well, Dr. Prince and Dr. Mills, if you all could address that. I'm going to also ask if one of our law enforcement officers could approach the mic and maybe respond to that also.
I would first want to have our deputy superintendent to address that because they are our administrator within our district.
Well, first of all, we have a severe issue specifically, and the first part of fixing a problem is knowing that you have a problem. Currently in our district, if you're an African American male, you're about 40% more likely to be suspended from school. Okay, that is truly disproportionate, and right now we have programs in 8 schools with the partnership with the University of South Florida to address that issue. Specifically, the questioner asked about school resource officers. It was in the TV. A police officer or a resource officer was fired, body slammed a student. I don't know if you saw that on TV. When I saw that, we actually did a principal training. And I had so many issues with that, okay? First of all, why was the school resource officer even called to that situation? And the question that we had is, if a child is refusing to get out of a seat, do you call 911? No, you don't call 911. You bring somebody in that might have a relationship with the child, and you talk to the child, okay? With regards to what the SRO's purpose are at the school, they're primarily there for the safety and protection of the students, but also for criminal activity. I will disagree in the sense that when we talk about community policing, it is very important for our resource officers to have relationships with the students. I know the superintendent just met with some of the folks that are in this room because he really cares about the challenges that we have with the disproportionate suspension of specifically African American males and also arresting students and what we're arresting them for, okay? And we are really taking a close look at that because you are basically putting a ceiling on a child's future when you arrest a child, okay? And we recognize that, and we are addressing that in our schools, and I think we have a very proactive superintendent who really is tackling this issue head on.
When I first came on the board as a board member, they would bring many of the children to be expelled, and it was like bringing them as like a herd. They were, of all the children that were brought before us to be expelled, they were African American. I think we had one Caucasian child that came before us, and they didn't get expelled. So that's the disparity that we are talking about. And that it is, and today, we don't have that issue. We have very few expulsions that come before the board. Now, we need to look a little bit more deeper and make sure that those expulsions, the numbers have been reduced, but as in regards to them coming before the board, there were a few times when that it just wasn't going to happen. So we have reduced that, and we have very few kids that come before us now and families for expulsion. But when I first got on, it was crazy. It was so many kids coming in that area. So we do have a way to go. We've come a ways since I've been on the board of St. Lucie County Schools. But there's something that was said over and over again that I think that we need to take an account of. As a people, we have to take first ownership of our communities and our children. And I heard something else that came before us today about a new program that's starting with Mr. Van Duzer and the police force. But you know, we have lots of after-school programs for our children after school. We have one since 1987 called Save Our Children. And we've seen a lot of children become successful adults, but we've also lost quite a few of them as well. And many of our after-school programs need us there to help them help our children.
That's right.
Our programs that we already have and have had for a long time, they need the support of the community. And the police force. I keep hearing relationship, communications. We need to bring the community into the schools, which we are doing at this time, and we're doing that through a speakers bureau at Westwood and at Sam Gaines, in which we have police officers, chief of police, many African American men coming in to be speakers to speak into the lives of children. But we do need our community to come out and help those programs that are already in force, that are already doing things that's been there for years. Get involved. Children's Service Council has a list of programs that they fund. Many of them are African American programs addressing our children. We need help. We need tutors. We need volunteers to come in and help us help the children, because together, as Representative Lee said, together we are a village. And if we, you know, many of us were so separate. And one of the strategies, as the young lady came up and said, what's a strategy? A strategy is that we all come together and strengthen that's already in our communities and make it work for our children.
And I just wanted to let everyone know, this is Dr. Donna Mills, who is the St. Lucie County School Board member, District 3. I think in our introduction, we probably talked a little bit about your daughter. So we just wanted to make that introduction. Sir?
Thank you. Oh, that's a hot mic. I think Dr. Prince covered the topic pretty well. Very recently, Superintendent Gent, the Sheriff's Department, and the Fort Pierce Police Department, and the Port St. Lucie Police Department met following the two very high-profile incidents involving school resource officers. And communication is the key to having effective policies and procedures across the board. I don't care if we're talking about between the mayor's office and myself, or the school board and myself, or a community and homeowners association. It's all about communication. But the key points to those two incidents in there were you placed a law enforcement officer, or not you, but they placed a law enforcement officer in a stressful situation that should have been a school disciplinary action. And a police officer is going to do what a police officer does when somebody doesn't do what he tells them to do, and he's going to apply the law. And he did. And there's a lot of key things that we train our people not to do that occurred in both of those videos. First thing is, if you remove the audience, the show normally stops. Okay? Right? And they didn't. And there's some other things in there, but my people are trained, and I know the sheriff and I just discussed this. Our people are trained that if they're placed in a disciplinary position, they need to tell the principal, no, I'm sorry, this is not a law enforcement action. You're going to have to discipline this child. Now, while you're trying to handle the child hits you, now it becomes law enforcement. So, those are the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in the schools here in St. Lucie County, and I think we have done a pretty good job of it. The issues that I have been very concerned about over the years are things like zero tolerance policies for, say, even a little pocket knife, or, the zero tolerance leads to unnecessary criminal charges, and it does place a ceiling on the children. But we are having very frank conversations between the school board and law enforcement in the county, and we're going to continue. We're very pro-diversion. We're working out different kinks in the various diversion programs, and we're moving forward.
Thank you, Chief Bolduc. Our next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Mr. Kim Johnson, who is, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Dr. Elizabeth Jackson.
And we are very much aware of the school board not wanting to comply to the DSEG order. And I just want to let you know that there are many organizations that are coming together in our county. I'm part of a think tank, and I'm not at liberty to give any additional information or to speak on behalf of any particular organization, because that is up to that president. But I do want you to know that we are very much aware of a lot of the issues the problems that our students are having, and that there are organizations in the Gifford, Vero Beach communities that we are diligently working, and you will be hearing more about what we're doing to help address some of the issues that were mentioned in your DSEG order complaint. I brought a copy of it with me because I knew that would be addressed.
Thank you. Just one last comment is that the press release this morning from the school board, you may have seen in the paper, is basically that they are defending the status quo and rejecting that there's any merit to the complaint. So that's their position today. Hopefully they'll realize that we're not really going to be going away anytime soon.
Well, there is a lot going on behind the scene regarding this matter, and I know that I cannot speak for the NAACP, but I'm a part of the think tank. But there will be more information as to what the community will be doing to address a lot of these issues, because we have students are being suspended for bullying, and there are so many problems that are happening in our county. But we will be, as we come together, as organizations come together, and it's great to have a community organization, this type of forum, to address some issues. But trust me, before you filed the complaint, for several years, we've already been investigating it. And you will be hearing a lot regarding the issues in our county and what the community, when I say this, what the community response will be.
Great. Good. Look forward to it. I'll give you my number and we can talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Real quick, I want to chime in on that real quick.
Yes, Mr. Johnson?
Just real quick. I like what Dr. Prince said here earlier. I used to be a former educator. Matter of fact, I used to be a former school teacher. As a teacher, and I'm looking at all these issues, and we're talking about the discrepancy between the number of students that are African American being suspended, the number of students in other races being suspended, and we're looking at these numbers. I'm glad we're looking at numbers, because when your light in your car comes on, guess what? You got to look at where the problem is.
Right.
And so problems are never problems. Problem is the opportunity to do something better than what you did previously. And so when you begin to think about stuff from that standpoint, and I'm thinking about, how during the time that I was teaching school, and the issues that would come up. Well, certainly I know, even as Dr. Princeton said, the officer himself job on that campus, that officer really should be there to educate our kids on law. And deal with, if there's drug issues, they need to address that. I believe those resource officers could be highly beneficially used if they were able to teach citizen rights classes to the kids. All right. To teach them what their rights are. I also think that the teachers and the administration have to understand what Chief Bullock said. I was a teacher, immediately take the audience away from that child, and that child no longer acts out. And I'll say this, I would love to see the school system itself have etiquette classes, because when a kid learns how to read and learn etiquette, they don't feel left out or to null and void or not knowing what to do. And so when you begin to think about these small simplicities that we've taken out of our daily diet that we traditionally use coming up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s that we've forgotten about, we have destroyed the fabric or foundation of who we are and where we're going, because we've let electronics and innovation and technology destroy relationships.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you.
How do we
get it back?
Let me say this, the Bible says something very profound. And everything that we do in life deals with family. But the Bible says this, charity starts at home, spread abroad. Every parent should know their child, and every parent should help their child identify their dream. We've left too much work up to neighbors and others to decide our own kids' future.
That's right.
These people are not the end, they're the means to the end. And so you utilize them as resources or assets in order to empower you to fulfill your dream. But if you as a parent don't spend time with your kid, you as a parent don't have a relationship with your kid, you as a parent don't know your kid, and as a matter of fact, you as a parent, if you only say negative things to your kid, then you create an environment of toxicity that will disallow them to think positive.
Mr. Williams, I'd just like you to speak to that too. I mean, you've been one of my role models when it comes to raising 4 positive professional children. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Well, yes. Thank you, Jean. My thought is that if you look out in this audience here today, and you see very few, if any, young person, teenagers here, then you ask the question, where are the other parents who have kids in school? Where are they? So I think the first thing that we all have to do is take ownership of issues and hold ourselves accountable as parents. And I think if we go back to some basic tradition, it's so kind of you to say that I have 4 kids, 3 lawyers and a doctor. But, you know, my father, if I take a personal moment for a moment, my father and mother, my father was a construction worker, my mom was married, 7 kids and 7 college graduates. But it was very simplistic. You know, I think you got to teach values at home, because values and train your kids at home before they go to school. We can't ask the school system to do the role of parents. And then when it comes to educating our kids, we got to, once again, I think it's a combination of looking at our school system, because when I go into school classes and talk to 3rd or 4th grade kids and ask them, how many boys and girls want to be a teacher? You'll be surprised that less than 20% or 30% of the kids want to be a teacher. And so what is that saying to us to some degree? You know, no matter what you want to be in life, it starts with someone imparting some knowledge in you and some value in you. And the school system, I think what we have to do is, once again, return to placing more values to recruiting the best and brightest to be in our schools teachers, to serve as teachers. We just cannot just get, I wouldn't say all the teachers, it's their second or third or fourth option. But we need to have 95%, if not 100% of the teachers, that being their first and primary goal to be a teacher. Because when you become trained as a teacher and really want to be a teacher, you understand that kids come there in the morning to class with certain problems, certain issues. You have to learn how to communicate with kids. You have to also know how to reach their parents and identify brewing problems before they occur, and spend some time with their parents, and also create a system where parents have to be more accountable. Got to come to PTA meeting. Got to go out and take part in the programs at school. And most important thing I think is missing now in our school system, I'll say it this way, I don't think in the public school system we see enough black males in the school system. We really don't. And you need a really diverse group of educators. And the last thing I'll say is that I think holding kids accountable, but more importantly now, I think I'll teach kids when I speak to them again, no longer, when I was a kid looking for a job in the summer, we looked at the classified ad. But now you compete globally, with kids all over the world, because now when an employer are looking for an employee, they send an RFP over a computer, and that reaches globally any number of people, 500,000 people at a time. So what are we saying now? We got now to figure out our school program to find attractive programs, and I think now one of our biggest issues in the school system now is that everybody don't need to think about being a lawyer, a doctor. Just we got to find what are their interests, and find an interest. Because look, when your bathroom back up, you ain't looking for a lawyer, or doctor. You're looking for a plumber. You know what I'm saying? And when your roof leaks, you're looking for a roofer. And what we have to figure out, and I think now, especially in a small community like Fort Pierce, I think we got to develop a partnership with the business community and create some, what I call a relationship where we have folks in the business community creating partnership with the school system, help identifying other interests for young boys and girls, so when they get 7th grade, 8th grade, that they can do some apprentice job in the summertime. And for example, and I say this, I love to talk, but let me just cut through this. You think about law enforcement. People look at a law enforcement officer just carrying a gun and a billy club and a mace. But to be a good law enforcement officer, it involves a lot of unique dynamics. It involves criminal communication, it involves science, it involves problem solving, it involves technology, psychology. So when you think about all the different disciplines that we teach our kids in school, why not have a partnership and have the law enforcement officer create jobs in the summertime, a tutorial program? Because now, they have to solve problems. They have to solve ballistic issues, blood issues, and things of that nature there. So if we begin to figure out partnership with different communities and have our kid look at a law enforcement officer not only as a guy who has to help in a crisis, but also he does 1,000 other things that we don't see that make our community safe, but involve the very same disciplines and subject matters we are teaching in school. Then you begin to look at law enforcement officers as a totally different person. I've talked enough, but the best thing we can do is all begin to reach out to each other and sort of build what I call a family relationship with each other. And the last thing I'll say is that we have to take ownership of our community again. And you look out here today and you say, where's all the ministers? Where are all the other community leaders? And where are all some of the off-duty law enforcement officers? They need to be in here, listening and participating here and hearing what citizens have to say. Because they'll be surprised that 90% of the things that citizens have said today have been positive things about law enforcement. So now when we have our youth missing, we now have our off-duty police officers missing, when we have other members of the community and parents missing here, you're missing a golden opportunity to do what? Not only to engage in dialogue, but begin to find and create solution to a community problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. You know, when we talk about community partnerships, I'd like to hear a little bit from State Representative Larry Lee as well as from Mr. Van Duzer.
You know, first I want to thank you and Phyllis for pulling this together. And Scott and I, we've decided we're going to do all that we can to help you grow it and make it an annual event, because Lorenzo is right. A lot of the people, what we see out here, we're probably all preaching to the choir. We need to get more people, the young people, as Lorenzo said, our church community. One of the reasons that I feel, and sometimes I'm a little hard on the black church, but back in the 60s, that's where the center of everything was. Economics, education, and we're lacking that. And I don't know how we're gonna fix that, but I wanna tell you a brief story. In August of 2013, I had just entered the State House, and I got a call one morning from Ralph Flowers, the late Judge Ralph Flowers. And he said, Larry, you gotta do something about all of this shooting that's occurred in Fort Pierce. I said, Ralph, I'm a state representative. That's the city, the county, you know, the sheriff. That's local. I'm overstepping. I think you should go. 2 weeks goes by. He calls me again. He said, 2 more have been shot, Larry. You need to step up. So I got with the sheriff, the chief of police, the mayor, and others, and we had a town hall meeting in Lincoln Park. Over 800 people showed up, and we started something, Scott and I and Alvin Miller, called Restoring the Village. It's an initiative. And what has happened from the 60s to this day, we have lost the village. And when you look at the village is made up of families. The family has disintegrated. The only way that we're going to correct many of our problems is go back to that village mentality. Representative Powell up in the legislation, some others joined me in some signature legislation that I introduced. It took me 3 years to get the governor. Every year, my first year he vetoed it. The second year he vetoed it. We look at the dropout rate of these kids. Many of these kids can't read, and they get frustrated. Statistics show that if a child is not reading by 3rd grade level, by the time they get to graduation, get to the 3rd grade, their chances of entering prison and dropping out of schools increases dramatically. But we finally got that bill into law this year, and next week, the Department of Education is supposed to choose who's going to implement the bill. But let me digress for a second. Last week, I had this lady come in my office, a grandmother, and she was concerned about what was happening with our young people. And this lady was in tears. And she told me, she said, I want to know if you would talk to my grandson. I said, how old is he? She said, he's in the 6th grade, and he told me he hates me, and he wish I was dead. And that woman started crying. I said, well, yes, bring him over. She lives over in the neighborhood with my mother. I said, I'll be over there at 6 today, bring him by. She brought this little boy by, and Scott and I were having this conversation yesterday about it. She brought the little boy by, and I told the mother and the grandmother to step away, give he and I some private time. So they went, you know, a few car lengths away from where we were leaning against her car. I asked the little boy, I said, what's your name? Savage. Scratching his head, looking down. I said, look at me, son. I said, what is your name? He tells me his name, then he starts back looking down, scratching his head again. I said, how you doing in school? Not good. I said, why? I don't know. I said, are you having problems with a particular subject like math? Because I can get some help for you. I got problems with all of them. I said, would you like some help? I don't care. I mean, this kid's attitude was so bad I wanted to smack him, but he's probably been smacked too much in his life already. So I sit there, and Scott and I started a program called Troop 772, and I had a video on Troop 772 where we had taken the kids to Washington, D.C., to Tallahassee. They met President Obama. We took him to the United Nations. So I said, I'm going to show this kid this video and ask him would he want to join the Boy Scouts. So I said, I want to show you something and show you some opportunities that I want to present to you and some of your friends if you want to join us, but I don't want to be no Boy Scout. I don't want to be in no club. I'm now lost, and I look at this kid, I'm just staring at him, and he looks up, he looks down, he looks up, look down. And I don't know what to say. Then all of a sudden I said, "You're angry. You're very angry. Why are you so angry?" "My grandmama." I said, "Why are you so angry at your grandmama?" "I'm tired of her always telling me to do this and do that and join this club and join that club. I'm sick of her." That kid had so much hatred in the sixth grade for his grandmother. I had never seen anything like it. So what happened was I stared at him and I said, "You know what? Have you ever been to Super Play?" "Yes, sir." Super Play is a place over here in Port St. Lucie where they bowl and have all these games. "Yes, sir." I said, "What's your favorite game in Super Play?" "Tag." "What's it called, Scott?" Laser tag. I said, "So you like laser tag?" "Yes, sir." Now his attitude changed. I said, how would you like it if you and I get together and go to laser tag?" "Yes, sir." I said, "You have who's your best friend?" "Tavares." I said, "What about me, you and Tavares start your own club? Why don't you, and since you don't want to join a club, you and Tavares start a club? Would you like that?" "Yes, sir." I said, "Okay, what is laser tag?" He said, "I think it's $10, $20. I said, "Okay, here's $1 for you and here's $1 for Tavares. Tomorrow when you go to school, you tell Tavares that you're going to start your own club, and I want y'all to find some other guys to be in the club, and you're going to be the president and Tavares is going to be the vice president. Y'all name your club, and and tell him that you got this guy that's going to help." He said, "Yes, sir." This kid attitude changed. I said, "Now, in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to tell your grandmother," I'll put the grandmother back in, "I'm going to tell your grandmother to bring you and Tavares to me." So now he's got to go and say, "Grandmama," he's got to engage his grandmother. So I said, now what happened was, what I found out, and I didn't think of that because I was driving home and I said, that was God, because I didn't think of that, but it was just something came. So I'm driving home and it came to me. One of the major problems that we have as adults, we want to tell these kids, get involved in what's good for them. We need to find out what's that hook. And Scott and I, we use Boy Scouts with some of them, but it ain't gonna work for them all. But what happened, my intentions are that once I get him hooked on every month, me taking them to tag, eventually I'm gonna say, "Hey man, let me see your grades." And I said, "What's this Alpha is about, man? Y'all got to get that to a C before we go to tag again." But you got to find it. But I just wanted to share that. And I can't say enough about Scott, because what he and I have done, and we're on a journey together. And obviously you can see that he's white and I'm black, but we're trying to send a message that if we all come together and we put down our differences, how we can make this world a better place. But I want to thank all of you all for being here today, and let us spread the word about what Gene and Phyllis are trying to do with this All Lives Matter, because all lives does matter.
Can I please say something for a moment based on what he said? When I look out at the audience today, if we had the number of people that are here at the school board meetings, we would have a tremendous change about. Tremendous. And not to come to complain and to bicker, but to just sit there and learn and be a part of the process. And someone said earlier, we as politicians, we're being frank about this now, we do need votes. And many of us will only do our constituents, those who vote for us. Not all of us. I live in St. Lucie West, but I work like a workhorse in Fort Pierce to help the situation, as well as what I do here in St. Lucie West. But many of us are not like that. And so the way you motivate politicians is you come out to their meetings and you go out to that poll. And I don't care if you don't know nothing that's going on and you feel like it's above your head or whatever. In fact, we need, because our church is so important, we need to just like we go to church for Bible study during the week, we need to make sure that we're at these different meetings that's out here, because this is what's going to change things. Those that make important decisions need to see the community's faces.
That's true.
So this is wonderful that we're here to talk about this. But if I had just the number of people that's here now, you would see things happen so fast. Now, this year, what we've done, because I heard Representative Larry mention about motivating a child, what we've done is we've brought in to our lowest performing schools, high schools. We have chosen 2 schools, and we have given every single child a laptop in that school. Because we need to make sure that all of our children can keep up with technology. And we have all kinds of attractive programs. But if you don't know about them, if you don't know about the great things that we are doing in St. Lucie County schools, then it's like as if we don't even have it. Right. My son is 15 years old, and because he's in one of our programs called dual enrollment, he has one more, he's completing just one more high school course. All of his other courses are on the college level. And after this last 9 weeks that we're in now, he will have all college classes before he even turns 16 years old. We have great programs in our schools, but the first step is that you come out to the meetings to learn what is going on so that our children can know they have the support. We're on television. We have our own school channel. We record all the board meetings. If we had a full house, and we take that and record that on the channels and put it into households, how much is that going to help our children and encourage them and our community? So those of us that know to do better, we need to do better. Because then we help others do better. And that's the only way change is going to come. That's the only way we're going to make a difference. But I just wanted to mention that you know, we've got, like I mentioned before about the speakers that we have. Our children love to hear about our stories as a village. That's how we survived for years and years. And as I look down at this panel, and I see the African American men that's on this panel, their children went very far. I have children myself that's doing very well in St. Lucie County Public Schools because of programs that we have, but we need the people to open up their eyes and see the importance of partaking more. And I want to put this invitation out to all of you that's here today. If you live in St. Lucie County, spread the word, come out to our board meetings, and show up so that we can move forward with this. Okay, we talking real now, right?
Our next question.
Good afternoon. I don't live in St. Lucie County, but I have family there, and there's some law enforcement back here that can answer this as well. With the increased gang activity in St. Lucie County on Fort Pierce, actually on the north end, what's being done about that? I know there have been some shootings, and I think on the news there's an almost kidnapping out on Okeechobee Road. And Mr. Lee and Mr. Van Duzer, I do applaud you for the Boy Scout troops, but what about the little girls in Fort Pierce on that north end? They need either brownies or something, because you've got to get them at elementary school now with technology and things. We've seen the incident about the sexting out in Colorado. It's time that these kids get reeled in at elementary school, because there's too much out there for them to have access to that parents themselves don't know about. I'm an IT and I do the IT thing very well. I question my niece and my nephew constantly. And elementary school, I think, is where it needs to start now, because technology has far exceeded a lot of our parents and grandparents who are raising their grandchildren, because the parents aren't there. So what are we doing about those young ladies in Fort Pierce and trying to help them as well?
Mr. Van Duzer?
Thank you. I really want to talk real. Everyone up here I know, two of my best friends, Larry, Kim. These kids are successful because they have a strong home environment. You want to talk real. These kids, if they do not see a man of color successful, there's no way they think they can be that. Their expression to me is either dead or bed. They're going to be in a bed at the Rock, or they're going to be dead by they're 20 years old. Without strong men of color in their life so they can relate and see a strong, successful African-American man, that is a huge problem. And that I can't thank Commissioner, Larry, every time I say I need a strong black male to come out here and these two step up every single time without a question asked. A lot of people ask why I do what I do. Lorenzo, I don't know if you remember, when I called you, we had a huge conversation, and he says, let me tell you something. You live in your gated communities, you think your world's fine. Sooner or later, if we don't address the situation, we will all pay the price.
Right.
That's why Larry, myself, Kim, the mayor, are so passionate about what we do, is because if these kids don't have a fair chance or an opportunity to be successful, it's all for nothing. The reason why the lady, I don't know where she's at, we went, Janelle Yost was our superintendent at the time, we wanted to work with the worst school with the worst kids. Unfortunately, we picked an age group between 11 and 14 because we thought the kids that were older have already made their path and it would be harder to get them back. Dan McCarty was that. And at Dan McCarty, we concentrated on 6th, 7th graders to try to get to them before they took that next step that you can't really get them back. Reading is a huge issue in St. Lucie County. If you can't read by the 3rd grade, statistically proven, your course is set.
Yes.
These boys at Dan McCarty, 26% of the kids read at grade level or above. Huge problem. Without giving these kids these opportunities and these chances, nothing will change. And I just want to touch real briefly. Every branch of law enforcement that we have here in St. Lucie County are the first ones to reach out and help me. From the sheriff to Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce. They're there 100 times. I'd like to take credit for what we do. Every time I've reached out, however they can help, they have been there. So we are very fortunate to have those three represent us here. We do realize girls, obviously. That's why we started the first step. We went out there to a park on 31st and G where these kids were afraid to play and no one was there at 4:30. The sheriff, myself, Kim went door to door and said, let your kids come out for this hour. We went there with the 20 minutes to play a little sport with them, 20 minutes to talk to them, 20 minutes to feed them. We found 32 kids and about 5 adults. We've been doing it for 5 weeks. Last week we had about 118 kids there and 50 parents. All I ask is to give these kids an opportunity and a chance to be successful. They're not bad kids. But you know what? Trouble will find these kids if we don't put something positive in their life. And that's what it's about. And Chief and I used to talk about it. When we were kids, if your parents weren't home, you would ride up to your house and your neighbor would look out for each other.
That's right.
Nowadays, we go home, right into the house, and we don't even look and see what's going on beside us. Let's look out for each other and take care of each other. That's all I'd love to see.
You know, there's a group. The question was, what are we doing? I'm a solution person. What are we doing, right? And someone came up and said, what are we doing to combat this drug and these gang violence and so forth? And what we have done as a city is we have top leaders in this city called the Round Table. And we have gotten a certain amount of money to combat this issue. And so they have been doing frontline work, on the ground footwork, within the different communities that are struggling and having problems. Our kids are having problems. Our chief of police, that's deputy chief of police here, he knows about it. Our sheriff back there, he knows about it. Top leaders within this community have come together and have said, let's do all that we can to stop these gangs. So what they have done is they have hired people to go out into the communities that are struggling, where our kids are struggling, and if they have any type of connection with gangs whatsoever, it could be a brother might be in it, or they just might live around neighborhoods like that. They're going door to door, and they are taking these children, and they are mentoring these kids. So we are working on this, but again, I stress, rather than to think this little group over here can do it, this little group over here, the school district, these little clubs over here, is going to take a community effort, and we all play a part. And I want to see you at those board meetings.
Chief Armando.
Because we need that.
Chief Armando.
I don't know if I can add to what Scott or Dr. Mills have added or have already said, but we've made a concerted effort. We made a concerted effort to make partnerships, not only in our community, but as Dr. Mills said, with leaders and business owners. What Scott is doing and what Representative Lee are doing are just wonderful things in our community, and they're starting to make a difference. And the big point is the police department and sheriff's department in Port St. Lucie coming together, breaking down some barriers that we had, sharing information, sharing intelligence, plus getting out in our community and building those relationships. And it's really starting to pay off. We made some significant arrests of our very bad people in Fort Pierce, and we've seen a significant decrease in the number of shootings. Not that they're completely gone, but we still have a lot of work to do to completely eradicate that. But as Dr. Mills was referring to and Scott were referring to, the police department has received a grant, the national grant, the Restoring the Youth Villages Youth Initiative grant, which are putting outreach workers in our streets, touching the lives of those that are in most need. And it's a unique opportunity because each child and each family is unique in itself, and they require unique resources. And that's what those resource workers are out, to make sure that they're getting those resources to that family that need those resources in order to prevent that child from doing any other harm or becoming a part of a grant or a gang, stuff like that. So it's a great opportunity. We're making great progress. And I know that I'm forgetting 1,001 other things that we really need to discuss today. But there's a lot being done with our new chief, Chief Hobley Burney. She is a great leader. She was the perfect choice for the Fort Pierce Police Department. She has a great message. And we're getting out in our community, and you're seeing a difference in our community today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ma'am?
My initial question was for the last panel, but I'll go ahead and say it. It's kind of a curiosity question. I read somewhere where police or law enforcement have a lesser training than a cosmetologist. I myself is a cosmetologist, and I wanted to know, how can we make it possible for there to be more hours of training required to become an officer, being that they are handling weapons and people sometimes in very hostile situations, and I stand behind a chair and just cut hair and put dye and style, and I had to initially have more hours than an officer.
We have Chief Deputy Armando coming back up. Thank you, sir. And I want to hear from my Port St. Lucie officials, too, in a moment. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Training is an integral part of being a police officer. You know, we begin with a 16-hour academy certification. It doesn't stop there. Then when you come to the police department, did I say 16-hour? 16-week, I'm sorry. And by the time the smoke clears, it's about 1,800 hours. I wish it was 16 hours. No, it is a 1,800-hour intensive training program, but it doesn't only stop there. Okay. When you become a police officer and you're hired by a police department, you go through an additional 16 weeks before you can be cut loose as a solo police officer. It doesn't stop there either, because that's a total of 32 weeks, you know, and We've all talked about the challenges that police departments have, that young officers have. You can't begin to learn the job of being a police officer with just 32 weeks of training. We have to take our resource dollars and look at training our officers, providing the community-oriented policing training. That's a 2-week program. Do you think you can really learn what community policing is in 2 weeks? You can't. You have a 21-year-old officer that has virtually no life experience, okay? And we're sending in them to domestic violence calls, okay?
Right.
Of adults that have children. These officers don't even have children yet, but yet we send them to these type of things, and I think there are so many speakers before me that have identified so many social issues that we're sending young officers to. So we need the training dollars. You need to turn to our elected officials and say, support our law enforcement agencies, because we don't spend enough money in training our officers on addressing those specific needs. We get by with the basic training. And back in, I think Chief Boldock had mentioned back in 07 and 08, when the economic downturn, the Fort Pierce Police Department lost $4.1 million out of its budget. A quarter of our budget, a quarter of our police staff gone within a couple years. We need to bring those monies back. If we're going to impact our communities, if we're going to make those relationships, we have to provide better training, more intensive training to our officers. And it needs to be constant. Just because I train you in the first year, I need to train you every year after that, because society changes.
Mayor Orbeck, if you would, talk a little bit about how these budgetary cuts affect not only the police department, but also the community in general.
We need money. You gotta have money, right? It's at the heart of our, when we talk about prosperity, well, you have to have a certain number of resources to achieve it, because you gotta be able to have food in your belly, a roof over your head. You have to have the basic necessities. So just like it is for us in our houses at home, it's the same thing for government. You need a certain amount of resources to get the job done. But you can never let money be the excuse. It's not about the money. It's about the action, and since you invited it, now you're going to get it. I don't really think of myself as a politician. I've only been elected for a year. It's got a certain definition in society today. I think of myself as a public servant, and I'm here to serve you. And because I'm not a politician worried about pandering for votes, I'm not the guy that's going to tell you what you want to hear, okay? I'm the guy who I hope is going to tell you what I think we need to know. And I was so happy to get that question, to hear that question of what are we going to do about it. I was so happy to hear Representative Lee say we're preaching to the choir, because I'll bet you $1 that when we look out in the audience, we're looking at the solution, not the problem. That's my personal bet. And we've done a really good job up here of diagnosing the problem, but we've just begun to prescribe the cure. And that's really what we need to do. And I'm going to tell you the secret, what I think is a secret. We got to put our work in. We got to work hard, we got to work smart. And it's not something that we can do by coming together on a Saturday. It's not something we can do coming together on a Sunday. We're going to have to put our work in for a whole generation. That means for at least a decade, we're going to have to work smart, work hard, and work together, or we're not going to solve it. We're just going to continue to have meetings like this over and over and over again. So I agree with Commissioner Johnson and Mr. Williams that it starts at home. But what do you do when the house is broken? We can't just say, oh, well, that's the solution. Last time I checked, you don't need a permit to have kids, right? The only thing you need to do to have a kid is to have sex. And the last time I checked, especially I'm a guy, I can speak for guys, I think, if we're full enough, if we have the basics taken care of, that's the next thing we think of. So kids are going to be made whether we have good parents or not. So what do you do about it? Well, Representative Lee gave us an impressive case study, didn't he? Because what Representative Lee did is he provided parenting to a child who needed some parenting. Now, he had a moment, that boy had a moment in his life, but unless Representative Lee is going to be his parent or a positive role model in his life every day, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if that child's going to have a happy ending. So what I would submit to you is that we do have this segue between the diagnosis of Doctors Johnson and Williams and the restoring the village and the programs of a Representative Lee and a Scott Van Duzer, because what I would, and actually a Dr. Mills on the end that's been doing this for a long time, her family's actually been recognized for doing this. Until we do restore the family, we can't let them be abandoned. We have to put our work in. So in addition to being in rooms like this on Saturdays, we're going to have to find the time and influence people around us to put in their time so that we can be the positive role models in those kids' lives. So we have to figure out a winning way to create the programs and then to scale them, to make them large enough and influential enough so that we're not going to save 100%, but that every kid who's willing to put their work in, that they're exposed to the opportunity to be the best that they can be. Because we do know in St. Lucie County, because we're a Kids at Hope community, that all kids are capable of success, no exceptions.
Dr. Jackson?
I've heard many common thoughts and things here today, and one of the things that I would like to say, whether it be good kids, bad kids, if you're the parents, you're the community leaders, there's one place that we all meet, and that's the house of worship. We have all of these persons, we have the attorneys, we have the doctors, we have all of us in the house of worship. So the question has been, what is the church doing? One of the things we can say, the church is really at the forefront of leading the social justice movement in our country. Many of the AME church, the Baptist church, you can name it, they're really at the forefront. But as leaders, and as a spiritual leader, we're talking about what the, for lack of a better, just keeping it plain, we're talking about kids who are in crisis. We tend to act when we have a crisis, but there are also kids who are good kids. They're honor students. They have succeeded in school. They're your football players, and they have problems too. Recently, at a meeting that we had in our community, at a tent crusade, most of our churches, most of our congregants consist of women and children. And so we have to address the issues that these members deal with on a daily basis. And I sat and I talked to let's say our good kids. These were professional children who were in the audience. And I asked them, we were having a tent revival, and so I asked them, what would you, a lot of times we preach around the kids, we preach to the adults and not the kids, we just have youth Sunday for them. And so I asked the children that particular Sunday, I was the keynote messenger. I said, what type of prayer requests do you have? What do you want the parents and the church to be praying for you? What are you facing in school? And I brought a list. And we put this on our wall. And these children were very serious. These children were dealing with cyberbullying, depression. I said in school, they were depressed. They did deal with police brutality. They dealt with jealousy and envy among their peers. I'm talking from, these are children from in the River County. They're dealing with gang violence in our schools. They're dealing with incest, molestation in their homes, gender identity. They're dealing with rejection, low self-esteem. I'm talking about rejection, low self-esteem from a young lady who was just elected prom queen. She's dealing with rejection, low self-esteem, prejudice, racism, racial profiling, suicide. These were what we call our good kids, our honor roll students, dealing with suicide, and one of the things that almost blew me away, alcoholism. So many of those children are dealing with alcoholism, various addictions, prescription, and illegal in the in the school system. So these were things that they put on the prayer wall, that during that 7-day tent crusade, that they wanted the parents and the church to address.
Wow.
One other thing is this. On a Saturday, we have an event on Saturday for the youth. So the youth have been in the church all week. And that Saturday, I was really tired. I said, you know, it's youth, I probably won't go out there this evening. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, that's a problem. That's what's wrong with our youth. Our parents and our adults don't have time for them until they're in a crisis mode. We go when there's a crisis. We go when there's a Corey Jones, and when there's a crisis, then we step to the forefront. And lastly, there's one voice that's missing. This has been a tremendous event, and I think many of our panelists have adhered, where we should have young people on this panel. We need their voice. We need their voice. And young people do not care about, they know Dr. Martin Luther King. They don't care about all these civil rights leaders that we tell them how we have fought and where we have come from. They care about what's going on in their world, what's going right now in their life, what they're dealing with. You know, I'm a prom queen, but I don't feel pretty enough. I'm being bullied. They care. And so I believe that the solution, one of the solutions that we have to not overlook, and one of the things they did tell me, they said, Pastor, adults are always telling us what's wrong and what we ought to be doing, but they're not listening to our voice. They're not hearing, and this is what Attorney Williams addressed. Let's find out what their genius is. What are the things that they're concerned about? And so they said to me, they said, on Youth Sunday, you know, you have the adults preaching and the youth sitting down. So you know how to change that, right?
Right.
Now let them participate. Let's have a message that's relevant. One of the things they said, you know, in church, you pray for the adults, you can prophesy to the adults, but you don't pray for us, you don't prophesy to us. And so I think the church is very involved in the global policy making, but when you talk about taking care of the village, I think we need to go back to taking care of our children, taking care of the village, taking care of not the tithers. You know, we want to take care of the tithers and people who are funding our organizations now. But what about that future little person? Let's take care of them, because these kids are hurting. And I think we need to begin to maybe have a forum or something to address their issues and what they feel is important for their generation. Mr. Lee?
Can I ask you to do something? Can all the ladies just stand for a moment? Just stand for a moment. All the ladies in here. You see, this is part of the problem that we have in the black community in particular. Where are the black men? When you look, and I know there's a few of us in here, but when you look at, thank you ladies, I want to give you a hand. When you look at not only events like this, but when you look at the church, it's always our women at the forefront. We got to find a way to get our black males more involved, and we need to start with our young men in particular, because they grow up to be men. But I just wanted to thank you all for being here.
Dr. Mills,
we have started something to help with the program. With the problem of not having enough black males before our children within the school district. This is our second year that we have had this program, but we are bringing black males into the school district and other males in this county to give their stories to our young people. We have a program where all the 9th graders at Westwood High School get to hear a different speaker every month, and these men come in and they give their stories. They talk about what it was like for them growing up and the challenges that they face and the decisions that they made that helped them get to where they are today. And the children, those ninth graders, are so intensely listening to these speakers, and we're getting feedback from the kids. We had one kid who saw me out in the community after hearing our first speaker, and he said, I'm still thinking about that, what that man had to say, and how much that man encouraged me. And this was a kid that had come to my church who I did not know until after the Speakers Bureau started. And he came to say thank you for bringing these speakers so that I can hear that I can make it too. I've been encouraged. And this other initiative that we started in the inner city, that's with the Round Table Initiative and the police departments and so forth. I met a gang member a couple of weeks ago, and an ex-gang member, 16-year-old boy, and I asked him, he was part of a program, Men of the Sword. There's a group of men that go out there along with our other people that go out now and go into the homes in those different neighborhoods. And this young man said he was in the gang and he came out to be a part of this group. And I asked him, I said, what was the most important thing in this group that caused you to leave the gang? And his answer was, my mentors. I have men that have come, they came out on the corner, they talked with me, they're providing resources with me now, and they stick with me. Men, other African American men for this African American child that are sticking with this young man, and for that reason, he's turned his whole life around. So I just wanted to give those testimonies to everything that's been said today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mills. Sir?
Okay, my name is Curtis Sherrod. Number one, I'd like to address the issue that the fellow here from Apple talked about. I felt the same way when I was 19. I thought I'd be dead before I was 25. And I had a strong black male model for a father. He was a master sergeant, 82nd Airborne, intelligence officer for his branch of the so-called Ready Brigade. He fought he had 18 combat jumps, fought 23 in separate engagements, and resigned rather than go to Vietnam because he said it was a scam then in '68. Okay, so that's where I come from. All right, that's my background. Okay, now the reason why I felt that I wouldn't live to see 25 was between the violence in my own neighborhood and the violence from the police. I mean, I was on my last ride, and it was one other policeman who came, who realized who we were. He was a paratrooper from the 101st, and he came to save our lives. So I know all police officers aren't bad. The problem is there's one bad one in the bunch, and there are 10 others who were there who didn't say anything, but went right along with it, and don't report them. Okay? So let's get that clear. We still got the same issue. Okay, no snitching goes both ways. All right, that's number one. Number two, I first came to Fort Pierce in the winter of 70, 71, picking oranges. Okay, out there across King Highway or whatever. All right, came to Delray, picking oranges, picking up people to go pick oranges. Okay, now I don't know whether people from Palm Beach are still here. But the streets of Delray been quiet. Rivera, West Palm Beach, they're going off. They're just like Fort Pierce. But this is the same demographic. What's the difference, you say? 1989, I happened to be teaching down in Miramar. And when Black History Month came, I said, you know what? I'm going to teach imperialism, and I'm going to use the video Shaka Zulu. I used excerpts. Okay, I wrote 200 critical thinking questions. I don't give answers to kids. I make them think and come up with answers themselves. Okay?
Okay, so...
All right, now, my question, what I'm saying is that I taught from 95 to 2002, I taught in Delray. Okay? Like I said, the streets of Delray quiet. My kids are going to college or whatever. I'm not asking a question. I know what works. What I need is the community, like she says, to show up to school board meetings. Or better yet, sign my pad here, and I'll be calling you. And we need to bring this to the school board because they know. They've known since 2007. I came here with the guy who set up the program, the website, which they did and then left it alone. Okay? Teachers have to be retrained because racism, dealing with the police is fine. But like the man says, community policing, we've had it before. What happens over a period of time? They cut the budget. If your curriculum is steadily regenerating racism and self-hate, then nothing we do up here is going to matter. Because 10, 15, 20 years down the road, it will be back with a vengeance. Okay, so this is what I want. Sign up, and like I used to tell them down in Palm Beach, show up and show out.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I just want to ask City Attorney Pam Booker, we had a question about what are we doing for our girls? What are your thoughts? What can we do to make sure that our girls, gang-related or not, are getting help and getting mentoring?
I've heard a lot of interesting comments here today, and for the lady from Riviera Beach, I'd like to say I'm from Riviera Beach. I grew up there in Riviera Beach, so very familiar with the area. One of the most important key factors for me is education. Education is the key to everything. Without education and my degree, I would not have gotten out of that situation. But my mother made it very clear that education was the most important thing to us. Enough of that is not stressed at home. I did go to college, graduate, of course, as a teenage mom, and my daughter is now teaching school. And she explains some of the issues that she has, and it all starts at home. It's a multifaceted issue. I don't blame any one segment. There's frustrations we're saying it's the school's problem. It isn't the school's problem. It starts at home. It's what are we doing as parents with our kids? What lessons are we teaching them early on in the beginning to make sure they're doing the things they need to do to be successful? Whether you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or as Mr. Williams said, the janitor, the plumber, we need to educate our kids and instill that foundation in them so that there will be respect when they encounter law enforcement officers as well. So those are some of the important things that we can give to our girls, as well as to make sure they're included on all levels in our community, that we all reach out to one another, and that would help go a long way in solving some of the problems that we've discussed here today. Everyone needs to be included. If all areas of our lives were a little bit more diverse in our work area, in our neighborhood areas, then we wouldn't have some of the issues that we're talking about, but we don't know how to address these concerns because we've never experienced them. So when you encounter something different, it's difficult to deal with until you've had that situation a number of times. So I'd like to certainly thank Mr. Lee and Mr. Van Duzer for some of the programs that they're putting on in the communities to have the communication, to have the dialogue, to get to know each other a whole lot better than we do, and we would avoid some of these problems. And that's important for everyone, not just our girls, but certainly for our girls. Education is the key.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. Ms. Charmaine?
And now it's tall enough for me. I am Reverend Dr. Charmaine Davis. I live in Martin County. However, I work in St. Lucie County. And one of the things that I see is that education is key. When I lived in Tennessee, I was a parole officer. And one of the things I soon noticed is that probably 80% of my men and women on parole could not read. They couldn't read. And for whatever reason, the teachers were afraid of them. Maybe they couldn't read, and when the teacher would call them, they would act a fool in class, and then the teachers were afraid, and they would send them on to the next class, so they would be the next teacher's problem. But then also after that, and after many years, I worked in nonprofit in Kentucky. And I was a grant writer, as executive director for a program called Clothe the Child. And if you gave us $1,000, we named the baby after you, okay? Because that's how hard it was to get anything. But now I am the grant writer for the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office. I write grants, and I get awarded grants, they're $100,000 grants, to lock up children that I could not get any money on the end to help them to make critical decisions. We bought clothes that clothe the child so that kids would not be embarrassed, because a child that has raggedy clothes is not going to sit at the front of the class. They're not going to raise their hand, look at me, look at me. They're going to sit in the back. They're going to miss class, and then ultimately they're going to drop out of school. So my question is, how do we change the mindset of our nation? Because we know that wherever, anything we value, that's what we put our money in. Our faith and money go together. Our value and money go together. How can we as a nation, how can we as this community change our mindset and see the importance of teaching our children critical thinking so that they will think about what it is that they're doing, so that they will not be in a position where a police officer has to draw a gun and shoot them in their head? What can we do as a nation to do that?
Let me take a stab at that.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. I want to say that I'm one that really have a lot of foundations from biblical principles. Jesus asked a quality question to the disciples in the midst of an effort to feed the multitude. The question was, what do we have? And so a lot of people want government funding to solve the problem. A lot of people want to blame other people. You know, you learn this in life, there's two type of people. Either you're a change agent or a blame agent. Blame agent is always pointing the finger. Change agent is trying to find a solution. And so ask yourself this question while you're sitting there today. What do you have that's collecting dust like something in your house as a gift to the world that you've not given yet? Because whatever problem that you had growing up, some other kid is having that problem right now. But have you identified in your notion of thinking the ideology of that person look just like I used to look? That person think just like I used to think. That person even talks and acts just like I used to act. Guess what? That's your new assignment. The church is the only institution that has every institution under its domain. And you got a church home, you got a household, and the Bible says charity starts at home and spreads abroad. You see people every day with these problems and issues, and you got solutions and answers for them and won't even move to help them. Government can't solve all your problems. School can't solve all your problems. I can't solve all your problems. But guess what? When somebody comes see me, I personally take them to the area that they need help and stay there and wait with them in order to get that help. Because I want them to get an education in how our nation functions. And so the reality, what am I saying at the end of the day? I'm actually saying this. If you look at our school system, why is it that we don't have an alumni association of high schoolers that just left the middle school to mentor the middle schoolers? Why is it we don't have a group of professions who come from that high school mentoring those who are getting ready to come out of high school? We're looking for all these solutions, and every time we look in the mirror, we see the solution, but we don't even think we have the answer to it. We can do it. But it takes partnerships, it takes relationships, it takes conviction, and it don't take a whole lot of money. It just takes some effort. That's right. And when you start doing that, the money gonna come. When you start doing that, the people gonna come. When you start doing that, change gonna come. And guess what? I hate to say it like this, and I'm a government official. Government likes credit, so guess what we do? When you start having success, we're gonna put some money into it too. So, ask yourself this question once again. What do you have? Because that what you got, God is willing to use if you're ready to release it.
Okay, really quickly, we have three people that I know wanted to ask questions. They have to be really quick because we're going to get kicked out really soon. And I really want Mayor Orbeck.
I'd just like to jump in that real quick because you're talking about basically writing a grant that goes back to the point. So let's be really explicit. Let's connect the dots. What we need to do is each of us needs to give at least one evening a week from now until we've solved the problem and we've recognized gains. Because we can't do it a nation at a time. We have to do it one community at a time. And so we have to show results, right? So what are we going to do about it? How are we going to change the nation? Well, here in St. Lucie County, or the Treasure Coast, but pick the unit, we need to turn first steps into second and third steps. And we need something like either the Children's Services Council or an umbrella organization to say, hey, we're going to bring in 1,000 volunteers this year. We're going to teach 3 to 8-year-olds how to read. We're going to mentor kids who need mentors, either through Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Boys and Girls, Save Our Children, whatever that program is, and we're going to measure our results. And when we find that as a result of all of us giving a day a week results in better performance, kids who succeed, kids who don't go to jail, and a better community, then we share that result, and it just becomes a very positive loop. Instead of a doom loop where bad stuff continues to happen, good stuff starts to happen. That's what we have to do. But again, it goes back to us putting our work in, because if we don't do that, it's not going to happen. So that's the challenge. Can we get 1,000 new volunteers this year to help with kids? If we can, we're going to win. If we don't, we're going to be back here next year talking about the same thing.
Ma'am? Hi, I just wanted to say I'm Bessie Brown, but Ms. Booker says she's from Riviera Beach. One of the biggest problems we have in Riviera Beach is that I'm retired, but when I worked at the city gave their employees 3 hours a month to go to the schools. But we had children going to 27 different schools out of Riviera Beach. It's not enough of them. You can't, it's just disheartening. You're going to destroy them. You're destroying the city and the children. And and basically now we have the pipeline from K to jail. I have a 5-year-old grandson. The school called. The police had crisis on him. And then when I was present, the principal told the police officer to Baker Act him. Now listen, the problem with that is that I knew what to do and how to handle her because I was a product of first year forced integration in Palm Beach County in 1970. So therefore I learned enough for you not to just handle mine anyway. But we have so many parents that don't know how to defend, to fight back. And so therefore, my thing is that you all are doing great, But basically, I would like to know who could I contact here so that we can actually teach our parents how to combat all this negativity that our children are experiencing, and I know they don't know how to fight back.
Sir?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. Just a quick question. I've been part of the Speakers Bureau that Dr. Mills has talked about at Westwood High School, and the most impact that I had an opportunity to have, I volunteered 6 weeks at Westwood High School working with a group of all males, and they had an average rate of detention or disciplinary action of 159 students, 159 times per year. After spending 6 weeks in that environment, it dropped down to 29. Now, not that I'm so great or anything like that, but the most impactful thing that I had to say to them was to teach them their history. My question is, how come African American history is not being taught in the schools school-wide?
Well, I know that I am told that we do have some curriculum, but it's a choice. It's where, on the high school level that is, where it's offered and students would take that as like that extra credit type thing. But we do need to change that around because we're talking about what's real here today. And what's real is that our people, because of how we came over here, we don't really know our history. Our history was cut off. We were made to have to deal with, we couldn't go back and take our historical line to Africa. And if we did, as slaves, because we were kidnapped, first of all, we know that. Let me finish what I'm saying. So we know that a lot of our children don't know their history. And a lot of our children's parents don't know the history. So we have to, as an educational system, I am 100% in agreement with that. Again, like I said earlier, I can't do it alone. We need to do it as a community. We need to be at the board meeting and expressing during unscheduled speakers time or either calling up to be speakers. And we need to have a group of people there there who are really concerned about this. You can't just keep asking the question and talking about it and expecting us to move out and do, it's like doing the same thing over and over again. It's called insanity. So we have to change it from we have to buy into it as a people to come and say we need to move forward in this area. We have got to have this in our schools because that alone will make a tremendous impact on self-esteem with our students.
A sense of pride.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, let me take a shot at this. I think the problem is greater than that, to be honest with you. One, you need it. Two, you got to make sure you get genuine material to discuss it. Let me tell you the reason why. If you think about our American history books in your public school, if there's 600-page or 800-page book, probably 20 pages is dedicated.
Martin Luther King had a dream, that's it.
To African American history. And then you know that got to be untrue if you ever read the writings of Carter G. Woodson, Leron Bennett, where there's volumes and volumes of business of books after each other. So I think the school system have to really become committed to it. And I think it's important because, you know, sometimes you wonder why racism exists in this country and why other immigrants look at us from a different lens. Because if they look at an American history book and they want to see the value of the contribution of different folks in American history, they see that the fabric of African America is not told completely, it's not told accurately. So now when someone is coming in from China, from the Ukraine, or from South America and Africa, they want to know, what have you done? Why are you crying about your problems?
Absolutely.
So I think, you know, in order to be successful in life, you have to work from a really accurate foundation. You have to know your history, but the history has to be accurate. But more importantly, I think if we, in St. Lucie County and throughout the public school system in this country, if we would revisit that and do it the correct way,
yes,
we would see that that our community from all walks of life will look at us from a different lens if they understand the contribution that we made in America. For example, you know, if we look at this Take Our Nation Capital, folks do not know that Benjamin Banneker is the one that outlined, was the architect of our national capital.
But we're talking about an inner sense of pride.
Right.
We're talking about behaviors. We're talking about across the board. Right. There's been a complete shift in these students, but it's just me doing it in one class and one group. Certainly, it's not enough.
It's very important, and I'll leave it at that. And when the man who, the Frenchman, Vassant, who came over and got mad because the American government wouldn't pay him all the money, Benjamin Banneker, he took his plans back to Paris with him, but Benjamin Banneker, remember, had the plans of the nation capital stored in his brain. Absolutely. And he outlined the new plan for our nation capital. It's basic things like that that a lot of citizens just don't know. But the most important thing, we need to have a good conversation with our school board member.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask.
Madam Moderator, I'm not going to fall into the history conversation because American history should include all Americans, and that includes all Americans. So that's a given. But this idea that there was a success, that the rate of detentions decreased by 82%. That's the math on that. Detentions went down 82%. We can't have pockets of excellence. If we take the time to do something and it works, well then someone up top or some team up top needs to say, you know what, we need to scale that, we need to make it bigger, and we can't continue to allow isolated examples of excellence. You got to bring the excellence system-wide.
Good afternoon, panel. I have a question. I've heard everything about what are we going to do for our children, but the children are the product of what they come out of, their home. What are you going to do for parents? Because I've come out of the classroom as a teacher. A teacher only has 45 minutes curriculum to educate. And then they have to go home. And if the parent doesn't have the essentials to help that child, that teacher has to start all over again to try to keep that child on pace. If a parent does not know how to be a parent, then they can't train a child. So I think in order to fix our problem, we need to fix our parents. First, it starts with jobs. We have our representatives here that can bring in influx of jobs to help parents provide the necessary abilities in the homes, food, shelter, clothing, because a lot of our kids are lacking that. A kid that doesn't have doesn't want, because they never knew that they can have these things. So I think our problem has to be fixed with our parents. What is the solution for our parents? The school board members, you want parents to come, but how can they come when they don't have transportation?
And that is why.
Not quite finished.
Oh, you finished? You want?
I've started as a teacher, now I'm a social worker. How many of you have gone into the homes of these children that you're trying to fix, to actually see what is going on?
And that's a segue, a great segue for us to do a conclusionary statement from all of you. I'm going to give you all 30 seconds, and I'm going to time everyone, okay? And we're going, that's a perfect way for us to have a parting comment from each of you. There you go.
Okay.
And the clock is starting right now.
We are all in agreement that we must also educate our parents as well. And because it does begin at home. And so this is the thing. Sometimes we focus on one area. We say, this is the solution, this is the solution, this is the solution. But it's like a pie. There are sections of that pie that we need to address as a community. So we do need to educate our parents. We need to do some other things. Let's start doing. I'm through with that. Let's start doing, because that's what makes the difference.
All right, thank you. Dr. Jackson?
I think as we leave here today, that we don't want our time to have been wasted just by listening. So hopefully we can come up with a strategic plan as we move forward to the next steps.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Real quick, I just want to say this, that there's a variety of countries that have an embassy courtesy of America, and that embassy is there to have a relationship with those citizens to bring them to America and their relations with America. The church is the embassy of the community. The church needs to be resourceful in finding out problems in the community and surveying those needs, and then begin to be a Google within their community so the resources can be connected through their members, calling those people back and tell them where those resources are.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
My only comment is, in 30 seconds, is take inventory of yourself. Use today forum as a launching pad to do what you can do. If each one of us make a commitment to do something, and to begin to do something to touch another person's life in this community, then this community will be a better place. Just do something positive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here today. It was great to listen to your points of views, and I know that speaking on behalf of Mr. Gent, I want to recognize Ms. Hilson, who's also on our school board. She's here today, so I want to give a shout out real quick, because I know she cares. But no, one thing that Mr. Gent and I, and this is only month 3 for both of us, is, you know, public education can be part of the solution. They just can't be part of the problem. And what I'm saying is we have to kind of get out of our own way, because a lot of the problems that you're talking about, we as a public institution are not helping, and we have to turn things around so that we are part of the solution. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Robert?
A lot of our conversation came back to transformative change. And how do you transform people that are already fully formed? Unless they have an epiphany, unless they have a life-altering experience, it can be pretty tough. How can you change in a profound way with the children? And so let's come back to where we started with those kids and what we need to do. And I think Mr. Williams said it perfectly. We just need to find a positive way to make a difference in their lives. And if we can do that for a generation, our society will be transformed, and it will be better than we can imagine.
Thank you. Ms. Booker.
To the question about history being taught in school adequately, I never felt that history was taught to me adequately. I had to go off to college and take some race relations courses to truly understand myself better, my culture, as well as my people. But I also learned from that experience, don't wait on the school system to teach you, don't wait on someone else to do it, and don't blame anyone else. There are resources available, the libraries are there. We all need to do that for our children. Don't wait on it to happen. It will not happen in any time soon enough for any of us. Go and do it yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Van Duzen.
I firmly believe we all have a passion or something that we care about. Share that with somebody. I agree 100% with the mayor and Lorenzo that do something for somebody else. Just because your world's great, everything's good for you, I'd love to see great for everybody and to take that time to give to someone else.
State Representative Lee.
Well, mine will be brief. I just want to give special thanks to Reverend Richardson because I made a comment earlier about where are the churches. His church, I've been to a number of events like this that you and Grace have put on, and we just need more churches to do that. And also for the men out there, when I had the women stand up, I want to acknowledge you because you are that chosen few, that 20% that is constantly showing up 80% of the time. So thank you for being here. And finally, to Pam's comment about history. We have a library over in Northwest Fort Pierce that would almost close because no one was using it. You know, we need to instill in our churches and our kids and our communities, go to the library. We can learn a lot on our own. But thank you all again for being here.
And on behalf of Phyllis, Gillespie, Reverend Richardson, Dr. Daphne Cooper, Robert Delancey, myself, we want to thank each and every one of you for coming here tonight. Today, we thank you for taking the time out on your Saturday to join us, and we believe that we've all been enriched by not only our panelists, who have been amazing, our first panelist, but also Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. We thank you again, and we just hope you all have.
Let us thank our attorneys real quick. Thank you all for hosting this event.